The Thanksgiving turkey was cooked perfectly, the potatoes were creamy, and the tension in the Palmer family dining room was so thick it felt like you could cut it with a knife. I sat quietly at the big table, trying to focus on my food instead of the awkward conversation happening around me. My husband, Thomas, squeezed my hand under the table as if to say he was sorry for his parents' behavior. "So, Thomas says Westside General is offering you a job," my father-in-law, Richard, said loudly from the end of the table. "Smart move, finally considering a real hospital. When do you start?" I took a small sip of water before replying. "I haven't accepted the offer, Richard. I'm happy at the East End clinic." His surprised face would have been funny if it wasn't so rude. "You can't be serious," Margaret, my mother-in-law, said, her diamond bracelet clinking against her wine glass. "That place? In that neighborhood?" Thomas spoke up. "Mom, Sarah loves her work at East End. It's important to her. Playing nurse at some small clinic when she could be at Westside?" Richard scoffed. "No offense, Sarah, but real doctors work at prestigious hospitals, make connections, and build a legacy." "I'm building something meaningful," I said softly. "East End helps people who can't afford to pay." Margaret cut me off. "Such a waste of your potential, especially with your education. Wasn't it Harvard Medical, Johns Hopkins?" I corrected her, but I knew it didn't matter. To them, my choice to work at a community clinic instead of chasing money and fame was impossible to understand. "Well," Richard raised his glass, "to Thomas's real achievement, becoming a partner at Palmer Investments at just 32, the youngest partner in the firm's history." I raised my glass with everyone else, genuinely proud of my husband. Thomas worked hard, even if his father's company made the road easier for him. "At least one of you understands ambition," Richard added, making sure to insult me in the process. On the way home, Thomas apologized. "I'm sorry about my parents. You know how they are." I did know. Richard and Margaret Palmer only cared about big names, money, fancy houses, and social status. To them, my job at the East End Clinic was a waste of my medical degree. But what they didn't know, what almost no one knew except Thomas and my closest colleagues, was that I wasn't just a doctor at East End Clinic. I was Dr. Sarah Chin Palmer, the chief of cardiology at Boston Memorial Hospital, one of the best heart hospitals in the country. I split my time between my hospital work and the clinic, which Boston Memorial had created as a community outreach program under my leadership. I had never bothered to correct my in-laws' assumptions about my career. At first, it was because they didn't care enough to ask. Later, it became a matter of principle. I refused to measure success by their shallow standards. Thomas kept telling me to tell them the truth. "They're being ridiculous, Sarah. If they knew you were one of the top cardiologists in the country, then what?" I'd reply. "They'd only care about the Boston Memorial part and ignore the rest. They'll never understand why I spend time at the clinic." So, I let the misunderstanding continue, keeping family conversations focused on Thomas's career and safe topics. It wasn't ideal, but it kept the peace during the few times we saw them each year. I couldn't have predicted how quickly things would change just 3 weeks after that Thanksgiving dinner. The call came at 2:17 a.m. On a Tuesday. I was already at Boston Memorial, having been called in for an emergency heart surgery 2 hours earlier. "Dr. Palmer," said the ER resident, sounding tense, "we have a 64-year-old male with a severe heart attack being rushed in. The ambulance will be here in 4 minutes. Prep the cath lab." I replied quickly, "Have blood work ready and alert the surgical team." "Yes, doctor. One more thing, the patient's name is Richard Palmer. Any relation?" I froze. "He's my father-in-law. I'm on my way down." Everything happened quickly. I called Thomas, who was asleep at home, and then prepared myself mentally. When the ambulance arrived, I was waiting in the ER, my professional focus strong despite the personal connection. Richard was awake but clearly suffering, his face gray with pain. Margaret followed behind him, looking terrified and messy, a huge contrast to her usual perfect appearance. "Richard," she cried, rushing to his side. Then she saw me standing there in my white coat, stethoscope around my neck. She looked confused. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" Before I could answer, the charge nurse spoke. "Mrs. Palmer, Dr. Chin Palmer is our chief of cardiology. Your husband is in excellent hands." Margaret's mouth dropped open, but there was no time to explain. "We need to move quickly," I said calmly but firmly. "Richard, you're having a heart attack. We're taking you to the lab right now to clear the blockage." Richard looked at me, clearly in pain and confused. "You're the doctor, but you work at the clinic." "I'll explain everything later," I assured him as we moved quickly. "Right now, I need you to trust me, he nodded weakly. I told Margaret, Thomas is on his way. The nurse will take you to the waiting area. The next 2 hours were the hardest of my career. Richard's heart attack was severe. The procedure to clear the blockage and place stents was complicated because of his anatomy and how bad the blockage was. I stayed completely focused, putting my emotions aside to do my job. After Richard was stable and moved to recovery, I finally let myself feel everything. Thomas and Margaret were waiting in a consultation room, both standing up as soon as I walked in. He's stable, I said immediately, taking off my surgical cap. We cleared the blockage and placed 2 stents. The next 24 hours are critical, but he responded well to the procedure. Margaret stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You're really the chief of cardiology here? I nodded, too tired to sugarcoat anything. Yes, for the past 3 years. I split my time between Boston Memorial and East End Clinic. But why didn't you tell us? She asked, sounding confused and even a little hurt. Thomas stepped in. Mom, you and Dad never asked. You just assumed Sarah was playing nurse because she chose to work at a community clinic part of the week. Margaret looked embarrassed. I don't get it. If you work here, why bother with that clinic? Margaret asked. I sat down, feeling tired after being on my feet for almost 8 hours. Because medicine isn't just about status or money, Margaret. East End Clinic helps people who would be ignored by the healthcare system. We catch heart problems before they become emergencies, like Richard's. We manage long-term illnesses that would otherwise go untreated, and we do it even if people can't pay. But you could focus only on your work here, she said, sounding less sure of herself. The clinic is part of my work here, I explained. Boston Memorial started it as a community project. I helped create the program. Preventing heart disease in poor communities is what I specialize in. I've even written research papers on it. The clinic isn't separate from my career, it's the heart of it. Margaret went quiet, clearly surprised by everything I'd just told her. Thomas put his arm around me, silently supporting me. Richard's recovery was slow but steady. During the 5 days he spent in the hospital, he saw how much respect my colleagues had for me. Doctors asked me for advice, residents wanted my guidance, and even the hospital administrator checked on him, making it clear I wasn't just any doctor. On his 3rd day, while Margaret was at home getting clothes, Richard asked me something unexpected. The clinic, East End, does it really make a difference? I pulled up a chair next to his bed. Yes, it does. Just last month, we found 17 cases of high blood pressure, 3 heart valve problems, and a serious heart defect in a teenager who never had proper care before. Without the clinic, these conditions wouldn't be treated until they became emergencies. Like mine, he said quietly. Yes, your heart attack might have been prevented if you'd had better care sooner. Your past cholesterol and blood pressure readings showed your risk was increasing. He was silent for a moment. I always thought community clinics were less important, not real medicine. A lot of people think that, I replied, checking his fore without saying more. I was wrong, he said, so softly I almost didn't hear him. 2 weeks after Richard left the hospital, the Palmers came to our apartment for a simple dinner. Richard was still recovering and following a strict, heart-healthy diet that Margaret was surprisingly good at preparing. Before we started eating, Richard spoke up. I need to say something. He looked straight at me, his expression more sincere than ever. Sarah, I owe you more than just my life. I owe you an apology. For years, I judged your choices without understanding them. I ignored the life-saving work you do because it didn't fit my idea of success. Margaret nodded and added, we both did. We were so focused on our own ideas of what matters that we didn't see the incredible doctor you are, not just at Boston Memorial, but especially at East End. Thomas squeezed my hand under the table, this time out of happiness instead of comfort. Thank you, I said, that means a lot to me. Richard continued, Margaret and I have been talking about how we can support East End Clinic. I understand from Thomas that you've been trying to raise money to expand the clinic. I looked at Thomas, surprised. He gave me a shy smile. Dad asked how he could help. I mentioned the expansion project you've been working on. Richard nodded. The Palmer Foundation wants to provide a grant to cover the whole expansion, $2 million, with extra money to keep the clinic running. I was speechless. Expanding the clinic had been my dream for years, more exam rooms, a place for imaging tests, and longer hours to help more patients. Richard, Margaret, that's incredibly generous, I finally managed to say. It's the least we can do, Margaret said, and I've been looking over the foundation's donations. We haven't done nearly enough to support healthcare. Richard added with a smile. Also, Seeing the $287,000 hospital bill for my care made me realize how important prevention really is. Later, when Richard and Margaret had gone home, Thomas hugged me. "So, how does it feel to finally be appreciated by my parents?" I laughed. "Surreal. I still can't believe your father went from calling me a nurse to funding a clinic expansion in less than a month. Nothing like a near-death experience and a giant hospital bill to change someone's mind," Thomas joked. "I didn't want them to find out like this," I said more seriously. "No one should go through what your dad did." Thomas nodded. "I know, but maybe something good will come from it. The expansion will help thousands of people." Sarah. 6 months later, I stood beside Richard and Margaret at the groundbreaking ceremony for the newly named Palmer Cardiovascular Center at East End Clinic. My patients, some of whom had taken off work to be there, watched with pride as I was honored, not just by hospital leaders and politicians, but by my in-laws who had once disapproved of my work. "This center will bring life-saving heart care to our community," I told the crowd. "No one should have to wait until it's too late to get the care they need." After the ceremony, I introduced Richard and Margaret to our staff and patients. One elderly woman held Margaret's hand and said, with tears in her eyes, "Your daughter saved my life last year. I couldn't afford to see a heart doctor anywhere else." Margaret, who once would have felt uncomfortable in this neighborhood, hugged the woman. "She saves a lot of lives," she said proudly, "including my husband's." That evening, Thomas and I walked home. "Are you ever going to tell them you turned down the chief position at Mayo Clinic last year?" Thomas asked. I laughed. "Let's not push it. They're still getting used to the idea that their daughter-in-law, who they thought was just a nurse, is actually helping to change how heart care is given to poor communities." He put his arm around me. "You know what I love most about this whole thing? You didn't do any of it to prove them wrong. You did it because it was the right thing to do." "Though," I admitted with a smile, "the look on your dad's face when he found out I was chief of cardiology was pretty satisfying." "Almost as satisfying as watching him write that $2 million check, Thomas joked. "No," I said seriously, "the best part is knowing the expansion will help thousands of patients. That's worth more than any title or recognition." I glanced back in the direction of the clinic, ready to continue the work that mattered most, making sure everyone could get the care they needed, one heart at a time.
The eviction notice trembled in my hands as I stared at my husband's signature scrawled across the bottom. Not a copy, his actual signature in blue ink, as casual as if he were signing a birthday card. My house keys didn't work anymore. The locks had been changed. I'm Holly, and this was how I discovered my husband of 8 years had sold our home without telling me. "Gordon?" I called out, my voice echoing through our, no, not our anymore, front porch. The spare key under the potted plant was gone too. Through the window, I could see my suitcase sitting in the middle of the empty living room floor. My phone buzzed. A text from Gordon. "Had to make an executive decision, honey. Market was too good to pass up. Your things are packed. The new owners move in next week." I read it 3 times, each time feeling the rage build higher in my chest. Executive decision? Like I was some employee he could steamroll? With shaking fingers, I called my sister Annabelle. "Come get me," I managed to say when she answered. "Gordon sold the house." "He what?" Annabelle's voice shot up an octave. "Without telling you?" "There's an eviction notice. My suitcase is inside. I can't even get to it." "I'm coming right now. Don't move." 20 minutes later, Annabelle's beat-up Subaru pulled into the driveway. Her partner Maya was with her, thank God. While Annabelle hugged me, Maya, who worked as a locksmith, assessed the new locks. "Standard deadbolt," Maya said. "Give me 5 minutes." "Is this even legal?" Annabelle asked, still holding me. "Does it matter?" He did it anyway. I wiped my eyes, refusing to cry. 8 years, Belle. 8 years, and he doesn't even have the decency to discuss it with me? Maya had the door open in 3 minutes flat. The house echoed emptily as we stepped inside. Most of the furniture was gone. My suitcase sat in the middle of the floor like a sacrifice with a note taped to it. "Honey," I read aloud, "I know you'll be upset, but this is for the best. The market's hot and we made a killing. I've moved most of our things to storage. Take what you need for now. We'll talk tonight. Love, G." "For the best?" Annabelle snatched the note from my hands. The audacity of this man! I opened the suitcase. He'd packed some of my clothes. All wrong, of course. No underwear, no toiletries, just random dresses and pants thrown together. "You're staying with us," Maya said firmly. No discussion. My phone buzzed again. "Gordon." Don't be dramatic about this. It's just business. Just business, I repeated, showing them the text. Our home is just business. Call Camila, Annabelle suggested, referring to my best friend. She works in real estate. She'll know if this is even legal. I nodded, but before I could dial, another text came through. This one from Xavier, Gordon's childhood friend. Hey Holly, Gordon told me about the house. Great deal, right? You must be thrilled. That's when it hit me. Xavier knew before I did. Gordon had told his friend about selling our house, but hadn't bothered to tell his own wife. I need to get some things, I said, heading upstairs. The master bedroom was stripped bare except for a few boxes labeled Holly's stuff in Gordon's hasty scrawl. As I grabbed what I actually needed, I found our wedding photo still hanging on the wall. Gordon's smile looked different now. Not loving, but smug. Like he'd won something. Found this in the kitchen, Maya called up. She appeared in the doorway holding a stack of papers. Looks like closing documents. They're dated 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. He'd been sitting on this for 3 weeks, watching me water the garden, paint the guest room, plan our future in a house he'd already sold. Holly, Annabelle said softly, what are you going to do? I took one last look at our wedding photo, then carefully took it off the wall. The frame came apart easily in my hands. Behind our smiling faces, I found what I was looking for, a USB drive Gordon thought I didn't know about. He'd hidden it there 2 years ago, thinking he was so clever. First, I said, pocketing the drive, I'm going to call Camila, then I'm calling Turner. Turner, the lawyer? Annabelle raised an eyebrow. Gordon wants to talk business? I grabbed my properly packed bag and headed for the door. Let's talk business. As we pulled away from the house, my phone buzzed one final time. Gordon again. Don't forget, dinner at 7. We'll discuss the new arrangement. I turned off my phone. Gordon had no idea what kind of arrangement was coming. He's been siphoning money for months, Camila said, scrolling through my banking app. We sat at her kitchen table, laptops open and papers spread everywhere. Look at these transfers. Small amounts, but frequent. Always just under 5,000 to avoid flags. My hands clenched around my coffee mug. Where was it going? An account I can't access. She pointed to a recurring transfer label. But whatever BGI Holdings is, it's been getting regular payments since January. 3 hours had passed since I'd left my former home. Annabelle and Maya had dropped me at Camila's, knowing she'd know exactly what to do. They weren't wrong. My phone, now turned back on, showed 15 missed calls from Gordon. I ignored them all. Turner will be here in 20 minutes, Camila said, checking her watch. He's bringing the property records. I still can't believe Gordon knew Xavier knew before me, I said, pulling up the text messages. They were probably laughing about it. Camila's face darkened. Speaking of Xavier, she turned her laptop toward me. Look who owns BGI Holdings. There it was, Xavier's name, clear as day, listed as the primary owner. My phone buzzed again. Gordon, where are you? We need to talk about this like adults. Like adults? I scoffed. Where was this adult conversation when he was selling our house? The doorbell rang. Turner arrived with a briefcase and a grim expression. Holly, he said, sitting down, I've reviewed the sale documents. There's good news and bad news. Bad news first, I said. The sale is legal. Gordon had the right to sell because the house was only in his name. What? I nearly knocked over my coffee. That's impossible. We bought it together. Check your closing documents from the purchase, Turner said. I pulled out the USB drive I'd taken from behind our wedding photo. Gordon wasn't the only one who could be clever. I'd been making copies of important documents for years, just in case. As I scrolled through the files, my stomach dropped. The deed only listed Gordon as the owner. But I paid half the down payment, I said. I have proof. It's right here. I pulled up the transfer records. That's the good news, Turner said, leaning forward. You've maintained excellent records. Every contribution you've made is documented. That gives us leverage. Leverage for what? A lawsuit, Camila cut in. He sold your home without consent while taking your money under false pretenses. My phone buzzed yet again. This time it was Xavier. Gordon's worried sick. Just come home and work this out. Home? I laughed bitterly. What home? Turner pulled out more papers. There's something else you should see. The sale price of your house. It's well below market value, almost suspiciously so. Camila grabbed the papers. He sold a $750,000 house for $600,000 in this market? That makes no sense unless... Unless there's something we're not seeing, Turner finished. I remembered the USB drive. Wait, I dug deeper into the files, finding a folder labeled Taxes 2022. Look at this. An LLC Gordon created last year, and look who else is on it. Xavier's name appeared again, along with 3 other names I didn't recognize. Call up the property records for that buyer, Camila said suddenly. The one who bought your house. Turner typed quickly on his laptop. The buyer is Riverview Properties LLC, registered 6 months ago. Check the owners, I said, already knowing what we'd find. Sure enough, Riverview Properties LLC was owned by the same people in Gordon's LLC. They're flipping it, Camila said, her real estate experience kicking in. Buy low through a shell company, renovate, sell high. The profit stays hidden in the LLC, away from me, I finished, in case of divorce. My phone buzzed one last time. Gordon. This silent treatment is childish. I'm trying to build a future for us. I stood up, a strange calm settling over me. Turner, what exactly do you need to build a case? Bank records, proof of contribution, evidence of deliberate deception? He gestured at the spread of documents before us, which you seem to have in spades. And how long should I wait to respond to Gordon? Camila and Turner exchanged looks. Give me 48 hours, Turner said. Don't tell him anything. Don't meet him. Don't respond. Let him think you're too emotional to think straight. I nodded, picking up my phone. One last message appeared, from Maya. Remember, the best revenge isn't served hot or cold. It's served when they least expect it. I turned my phone off again and looked at Turner. Let's talk about what happens next. Every deposit, every transfer, every contribution you've made to joint expenses, Turner said, organizing files on his desk. It's all here, going back 10 years. I'd spent the last 2 days holed up in Turner's office, piecing together my financial history. Camila sat beside me, taking notes and highlighting patterns we'd found. Look at this, Camila pointed to a spreadsheet. You paid for the kitchen renovation last year, $40,000 from your inheritance, which mysteriously increased the house's value by $90,000, Turner added. Money that Gordon and his friends will now pocket. My phone lit up with another message from Gordon. 3 days of silence. Real mature, Holly. I'm starting to lose my patience. He's getting nervous, Camila observed. Good. A knock at the door interrupted us. Maya walked in, carrying a stack of papers. You were right about the renovation company, she said, dropping the documents on Turner's desk. It's owned by one of the LLC partners. They've been flipping houses all over town using the same scheme. I flipped through the papers. These are all recent sales? Last 18 months, Maya confirmed. They buy low through shell companies, renovate using their own company, then sell high through different shells. The profits never touch personal accounts. Turner leaned back, a slight smile playing on his lips. This is better than we hoped. It's not just your house, it's a pattern. My phone buzzed again, this time from Annabelle. Gordon just showed up at my place looking for you. I told him to get lost. Also, you need to see what Xavier's wife just posted on Facebook. I pulled up the post. There it was, Xavier's wife showing off their new vacation home in Aspen, the same week my house had been sold. That's interesting timing, Camila said, looking over my shoulder. Wonder where that down payment came from. Turner was already typing. Property records show. Would you look at that? Purchased through BGI Holdings. The same company getting those regular transfers from Gordon, I said quietly. Maya sat down next to me. Holly, I know this is overwhelming, but you need to hear something. She pulled out her phone and played a voice message from Gordon. Maya, I know you and Annabelle are hiding her. Gordon's voice filled the room. Just tell Holly she's being ridiculous. This is business. The house was in my name. I had every right. She needs to understand her place in this marriage. My hands stopped shaking. Something inside me hardened. My place? I repeated. Let me show him my place. Turner pulled out a fresh legal pad. Here's what we're going to do. First, we file an emergency injunction to freeze the sale proceeds. Then, we go after the LLC for fraud. Won't that tip our hand? Camila asked. No, Turner smiled, because Holly here has something they don't know about. I pulled out the USB drive. Gordon's private records, everything he thought was safely hidden behind our wedding photo. Including emails between him and Xavier discussing this scheme going back 2 years, Maya added. Another message from Gordon. I'm giving you until tomorrow to come home and discuss this reasonably. After that, things will have to change. Things will change all right, I muttered. Turner handed me a document. Sign here. This gives us permission to subpoena all the LLC records. As I signed, Camila's phone pinged. She read the message and let out a low whistle. What? I asked. Remember that real estate agent I called? She just sent over Gordon's showing appointments from last month. Guess who was looking at penthouses downtown? I didn't need to guess. Gordon had been planning his exit strategy for months. Maya put her hand on my shoulder. Holly, whatever you decide to do next, we're all behind you. Turner, I said, straightening in my chair. How long until everything's ready? Give me till Friday, then we can move. I nodded, picking up my phone. One new message waited, from Xavier's wife. Holly, we need to talk. There's something you should know about Gordon and Xavier's business trips to Aspen. Friday it is, I said, looking at Turner. Time to show Gordon exactly what my place is in this marriage. Camila grinned. Should we tell him you're coming? No, I replied, finally allowing myself a small smile. Let's make it a surprise. After all, he loves making executive decisions without consulting me. Let's see how he likes it when the tables are turned. Turner gathered the documents into his briefcase. Remember, not a word to anyone. Let them think you're still too emotional to function. The element of surprise is our biggest advantage. I looked at my phone one last time before turning it off. Gordon's last message glowed on the screen. I hope you're using this time to think about your behavior. Oh, I was thinking all right, just not the way he imagined. You're late, Gordon snapped as I slid into my seat at his favorite restaurant. 5 days of silence had clearly worn on him. His usual perfectly pressed shirt was wrinkled, his hair unkempt. Traffic, I murmured, playing the part of the chastised wife. Across the restaurant, Camila sat at the bar, pretending to read a book while keeping watch. I ordered for you already, Gordon said, his tone softening slightly. Your usual salmon? Of course he had. Heaven forbid I make my own choices. Where have you been staying? He asked, trying to sound casual. I shrugged, examining my menu despite his already ordering. Around? This silent treatment is beneath you, Holly. I've been trying to reach you for days. The waiter arrived with our drinks. I noticed Gordon had ordered me white wine, though I'd switched to red months ago, another detail he'd never bothered to notice. How's Xavier? I asked innocently. Enjoying his new place in Aspen? Gordon's hand tightened around his whiskey glass. What does that have to do with anything? Just making conversation. Isn't that what you wanted? To talk? Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Turner. Done. All accounts frozen. I took a sip of the wine I didn't want, watching Gordon over the rim of my glass. His phone buzzed in his pocket, then again, and again. Excuse me, he said, pulling it out. I watched his face change as he read the messages. I need to make a call. The moment he stepped away, Camila slid into his seat. Xavier's blowing up his phone, she whispered. Turner's injunction just hit. They can't access any of the LLC accounts. How long until he realizes about the other accounts? Minutes, maybe seconds. Gordon returned, his face pale. Holly, I need to handle something. We'll have to do this another time. But you ordered my salmon, I said, widening my eyes. And we haven't even talked about the house yet. His phone buzzed again. This time, he answered it at the table. What do you mean, frozen? He hissed into the phone. How can they all be frozen? I could hear Xavier's panicked voice on the other end. Check the backup account, Gordon snapped. Then, what do you mean it's empty? That's impossible. I pulled out my own phone, opening my banking app. Oh, honey, I said softly. Is something wrong with the accounts? His head snapped up, eyes narrowing. What did you do? Me? I'm just a wife who doesn't understand business, remember? The waiter appeared with our food. The salmon for the lady? She's not staying, Gordon growled. Actually, I said, smoothing my napkin, I think I am. You did order for me, after all. His phone buzzed yet again. This time it was a text from his bank. I knew exactly what it said. The same message I'd received an hour ago when I'd transferred every penny from our joint accounts. Holly, he said, his voice dangerously low. What have you done? Made an executive decision, I replied, cutting into my salmon. The market was too good to pass up. You can't do this. Really? The accounts were in my name too, unlike the house. The color drained from his face. How did you know about that? Or about BGI Holdings? Or about the shell companies? I took another bite of salmon. It's actually quite good. You always did know what I liked. Well, except for the wine. His phone kept buzzing. Messages from Xavier, from their other partners, from their banks. This is illegal, he sputtered. Camila appeared at our table again, this time with Turner. Actually, Turner said, placing a thick envelope on the table, everything she's done is perfectly legal, unlike, say, using shell companies to hide assets from your spouse, or fraudulently using someone's inheritance money for personal gain. Gordon's face went from white to red. You brought a lawyer to dinner? Well, you brought Xavier into our marriage, I countered. Fair is fair. Mrs. McDonald, Turner said formally, shall we proceed with filing the divorce papers? Divorce? Gordon choked. Holly, be reasonable. I stood up, finally meeting his eyes. I am being reasonable. In fact, I'm being business-minded. Isn't that what you wanted? You'll regret this, Gordon threatened. No, I said, picking up my purse. I regret not doing it sooner. Oh, and Gordon, the salmon really was excellent. You should try it. I already paid for it, with what's left of your credit card. As I walked out with Turner and Camila, I heard Gordon's phone buzz one final time, a message from Xavier's wife. We need to talk about the women you brought to Aspen. The night wasn't over yet. They're scrambling, Camila said, scrolling through her phone. We sat in Turner's office the next morning, watching the aftermath unfold. Xavier's wife is posting cryptic messages about trust and betrayal. She's tagged every partner's wife in them. The LLC's lawyer has been trying to reach me since dawn, Turner added, checking his messages. They're offering to negotiate. I sipped my coffee, feeling strangely calm. Too late for that. My phone lit up with a text from Maya. Gordon just tried to get into your old house. The new owners called the police. He's unraveling, Annabelle said from her perch on Turner's windowsill. Good. Another message popped up, this one from Xavier's wife, Jessica. Holly, I'm ready to talk. Meet me at Riverside Cafe in an hour? I showed the message to Turner, who nodded. Go, but wear this. He handed me a small recording device, just in case. The cafe was quiet when I arrived. Jessica sat in a corner booth, looking nothing like her perfectly polished Facebook photos. Her eyes were red, her designer handbag clutched tight against her chest. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I should have told you sooner. Told me what? She pulled out her phone, hands shaking. I found these last month. Didn't know what to do with them. She slid the phone across the table. Photos filled the screen. Gordon and Xavier at various locations, always with different women. The timestamps matched their supposed business trips. There's more, Jessica said, her voice breaking. The houses weren't just for flipping, they were party houses, I finished, the pieces clicking into place. That's why they sold below market value. They needed places that couldn't be traced back to them. She nodded. The women, some of them were escorts, expensive ones, paid through BGI Holdings, I said. That's what the regular transfers were for. My phone buzzed. A message from Gordon. Whatever Jessica tells you is a lie. She's unstable. Don't trust her. I showed Jessica the text. She laughed bitterly. Unstable? I have bank statements, Holly, receipts, hotel bookings, everything. Would you be willing to show those to my lawyer? I'll do better than that. She pulled out a USB drive. I'll give them to you. Xavier doesn't know I made copies. Just then, both our phones buzzed simultaneously. A group message from Xavier to several numbers. Emergency meeting at the office. Everyone needs to be there. No exceptions. He's panicking, Jessica said. They all are. The wives are talking to each other now, comparing notes. I stood up. Come with me to Turner's office. We need to move fast. Back at Turner's, the pieces fell into place rapidly. Jessica's evidence, combined with what we already had, painted a picture far darker than simple real estate fraud. This changes everything, Turner said, reviewing the files. We're not just looking at civil charges anymore. This is criminal territory. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Messages from Gordon grew increasingly desperate. Holly, we need to talk. This has gone too far. Think about what you're doing to our family. I can explain everything. Camila, who'd been quiet, suddenly sat up straight. Look at this, she said, pointing to her laptop. They're trying to transfer the house again, to another shell company. They can't, Turner said. The injunction. They're trying anyway. Desperate men do desperate things. As if on cue, Annabelle burst into the office. Gordon's at the house again. The owner's called. He's trying to break in. Turner was already dialing. I'm calling the police. This ends now. I picked up my phone, finally responding to Gordon's messages. Stop trying to enter the house. It's not yours anymore. Just like I'm not yours anymore. His reply came instantly. You have no idea what you're doing. You're ruining everything we built. No, I typed back. I'm exposing what you built. There's a difference. Jessica touched my arm. There's one more thing you should know. She pulled up another photo on her phone. It showed Gordon with a young woman entering a jewelry store. This was last week, right after he sold your house. The woman wore the same dress I'd once admired in a shop window. Gordon had called it tacky then, said it wasn't my style. Send it to me, I said quietly. My phone buzzed one final time. A message from Xavier. Holly, whatever Gordon's done, we can work this out. Name your price. I looked at Turner. They're offering a buyout. He smiled grimly. They don't understand, do they? This isn't about money anymore. No, I agreed, standing up. It's about justice, and it's time they learned the difference. Jessica straightened in her chair. What's next? I checked my watch. Their emergency meeting starts in an hour. Should we show up uninvited? Turner gathered his files. Let's give them a meeting they'll never forget. The elevator doors opened to the 12th floor of Xavier's office building. Gordon's voice echoed down the hallway, sharp with panic. What do you mean you can't reverse it? He shouted. Call them again. I walked toward the conference room, Turner and Jessica flanking me, Camilla bringing up the rear. Through the glass walls, I could see Gordon pacing while Xavier sat with his head in his hands. 3 other men, their business partners, huddled around a laptop. Ready? Turner whispered. I pushed open the door. Hope we're not interrupting. The room fell silent. Gordon froze mid-stride. Holly, Xavier recovered first, standing up. This is a private meeting. Private like the houses? Jessica stepped forward. Or private like the escorts? Xavier's face went ash white. Jess, what are you— Sit down, Turner commanded, his voice cutting through the tension. All of you, now. The men exchanged glances but complied. Gordon remained standing. You can't be here, he said, but his voice wavered. I pulled out a chair at the head of the table. Actually, I can. You see, I'm now a majority stakeholder in BGI Holdings. That's impossible, one of the partners sputtered. Check your phones, Camilla suggested sweetly. They did. The color drained from their faces as they saw the notifications. How? Gordon demanded. Remember that emergency fund you kept in the Cayman account? I smiled. The one you thought I didn't know about? Turns out, having my name on the account meant I could use it to buy shares. A lot of shares. You can't do this, Xavier said. She already has, Turner interjected, dropping a thick folder on the table, along with providing evidence of fraud, money laundering, and several other interesting activities to the relevant authorities. Gordon lunged for the folder. I pulled it back. I said. You might want to see this first. I nodded to Camilla, who started playing a video on the conference room screen. Security footage appeared, showing Gordon and Xavier entering various properties with different women. The timestamps matched Jessica's photos perfectly. We have hundreds of hours of this, I said quietly. From every house you've flipped. Holly, Gordon's voice turned pleading. Whatever you think this is, save it, Jessica cut in. I already told her everything. About the houses, the women, the parties, all of it. Xavier slumped in his chair. Jess, please. The FBI is very interested in your business model, Turner continued, his tone conversational, particularly the part about using real estate transactions to launder money for your little side business. The other partners started whispering frantically among themselves. You have 2 options, I said, standing up. Option 1, we turn everything over to the authorities. You all face charges. Your other properties get seized. Your wives find out exactly what kind of business meetings you've been having. Option 2, one of the partners asked weakly. You sign everything over. The properties, the companies, all of it. Walk away with enough to start over, but not enough to maintain your current lifestyles. That's blackmail, Gordon snarled. No, Turner corrected. It's negotiation. Your specialty, isn't it? My phone buzzed. A message from Annabelle. Police just arrested Gordon's friend trying to break into the house again. Want me to press charges? I showed the message to Gordon. Sending friends to do your dirty work now? You're bluffing, Xavier said suddenly. You wouldn't risk losing everything in a legal battle. I pulled out one final document. Remember that prenup you made me sign, Gordon? The one that said I get nothing if I'm unfaithful? I slid the paper across the table. Turns out it works both ways. And unlike you, I have proof. Gordon grabbed the paper, his hands shaking as he read. You have 1 hour to decide, Turner announced. After that, we go to the authorities. You'd destroy everything? Gordon asked, his voice barely a whisper. Just for revenge? I leaned across the table. No, honey, I'm just making an executive decision. The market for justice is too good to pass up. As we turned to leave, Jessica stood up. I'm going with them, she told Xavier. The divorce papers will be filed today. Jess, wait. Oh, I paused at the door. Gordon? That young woman you bought the diamond bracelet for last week? The one in the red dress? I smiled sweetly. She works for us. Consider the photo she took our insurance policy. The last thing I saw as the door closed was Gordon's face crumpling as he realized just how completely he'd been outplayed. In the elevator, Camila checked her watch. 59 minutes until their world implodes. Unless they take the deal, Jessica added. They'll take it, I said confidently. Men like them always choose self-preservation over pride. Turner's phone buzzed. First partner's lawyer just called. They're ready to negotiate. I smiled. Right on schedule. Sign here and here. Turner pointed to the marked lines. Initial these pages. Gordon's hand trembled as he signed the documents. Across the conference table, Xavier and the other partners did the same, their lawyers hovering nervously behind them. 3 days had passed since our confrontation. We were back in the same conference room, but the power dynamic had shifted dramatically. That's the last of the property transfers, Turner announced, collecting the papers. BGI Holdings is now officially under new management. You've ruined us, Xavier muttered, not meeting anyone's eyes. No, Jessica corrected from her seat beside me. You ruined yourselves. We just exposed it. My phone buzzed with a message from Annabelle. The moving truck's just finished at the house. Everything's out. Gordon looked up sharply at the sound. Where are my things? In storage, I replied coolly, just like you did with mine. The access code will be sent to your lawyer. What am I supposed to do now? His voice cracked. Where am I supposed to go? Funny, I said. Those are the exact questions I asked myself when you sold our house. One of the partners stood up abruptly. This is insane. We had a good thing going. A good thing? Camila interrupted, pulling up photos on the conference room screen. You mean these good things? Images flashed across the screen. Their parties, their secret meetings, bank statements showing suspicious transfers. Enough, Turner said firmly. The deals are signed. You've all been more than fairly compensated considering the alternatives. Fairly compensated? Gordon spat. You've taken everything. Not everything, I corrected. Just the illegally obtained assets. You each still have your personal accounts. Well, what's left of them? Xavier's lawyer cleared his throat. My client would like to discuss the matter of the Aspen property. The property purchased with laundered money? Turner raised an eyebrow. That property has been surrendered to authorities as evidence of criminal activity. Unless you'd like to explain its funding source to the FBI? The lawyer fell silent. My phone buzzed again. This time from Maya. Police just called. They're ready to move on the other properties whenever you give the word. I showed the message to Turner, who nodded. Gentlemen, he announced, I suggest you use what's left of your resources to start fresh, somewhere far away, because once this goes public... Public? Xavier's head snapped up. We promised not to press charges, Jessica cut in. We never promised silence. Gordon stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Holly, please, we can work this out. We can start over. Like you were planning to start over with that girl in the red dress? I pulled out one final photo. Gordon in the jewelry store, caught in the act. How much did that bracelet cost? More or less than my inheritance you stole? He collapsed back into his chair, defeated. Mr. Gordon, Turner said firmly, I suggest you leave now. Your new apartment lease starts today. The address has been sent to your lawyer. New apartment? Gordon looked confused. 1 bedroom, 3rd floor walk-up, I said. The rent fits within your new budget. I picked it myself. Considered it my final executive decision in our marriage. The partners filed out one by one, their lawyers herding them toward the elevators. Xavier paused at the door. Jessica, he started. Save it, she cut him off. The divorce papers are being filed this afternoon. Your things will be gone by the time I get home. Gordon was the last to leave. He stopped beside my chair. I never meant, he began. Yes, you did, I interrupted. You meant every bit of it. You just never thought I'd fight back. The door closed behind him with a final click. Well, Camila said into the silence. That was satisfying. Turner gathered his briefcase. The properties will be sold at market value. The proceeds will be split among the victims of their scheme. And the houses they used for their parties? Jessica asked. Evidence in an ongoing investigation, Turner smiled. The authorities are very interested in their guest lists. My phone lit up one last time. A message from Gordon. I'm sorry. Too little, too late. Ready to go? Camila asked, standing up. I looked around the conference room where my marriage had effectively ended, where justice had finally been served. Just one more thing, I said, pulling out an envelope. Inside was the USB drive I'd taken from behind our wedding photo, Gordon's secret insurance policy that had become his downfall. I dropped it in the shredder. Now I'm ready. As we walked out, Jessica linked her arm through mine. What next? I smiled. I hear the real estate market is looking up. Maybe it's time to buy a new house. One that's all mine? Perfect, I said, signing the final document. The keys to my new house clinked as Turner handed them over. Congratulations, he smiled. This one's all yours. No hidden surprises, no secret partners. Camila bounced excitedly beside me. Can we see it now? We drove to the house, my house, in comfortable silence. It sat on a quiet street, smaller than my old home, but somehow more significant. The garden needed work. The paint was chipping, but it was mine. All mine. Look what we brought, Annabelle's voice rang out as we pulled up. She and Maya stood on the porch, holding paint rollers and takeout bags. We thought you might want to make it yours right away, Maya explained. My phone buzzed, a news alert. The headline made me pause. Local real estate scheme exposed. Multiple arrests made. They actually did it, Jessica said, reading over my shoulder. She'd arrived with a bottle of champagne and determination in her eyes. They tried to start the business up again in another state. Not very smart, Turner noted, pulling up the full article. The FBI was watching their every move. Speaking of moves, Camila interrupted. Gordon's girlfriend, the one in the red dress, just testified against him. Turns out she was working with 3 other escort agencies they'd used. I unlocked the front door, letting everyone in. The empty rooms echoed with possibility. Paint first or food first? Annabelle asked, holding up the rollers. Actually, I said, there's something else first. I pulled out a small box from my bag. Inside was a framed photo, not my wedding photo this time, but a new one taken last week. It showed all of us. Me, Annabelle, Maya, Camila, Jessica, even Turner, celebrating the final court victory. Where should we hang it? Maya asked. Right here. I pointed to the living room wall, where everyone can see it. As Maya hung the photo, my phone buzzed again. A message from Gordon's sister. He's asking about you. Says he wants to apologize properly. I showed it to the others. Delete it, Jessica advised, like I deleted Xavier's 100 messages of regret. Already done, I said. Some chapters need to stay closed. We ordered pizza, opened Jessica's champagne, and started painting the living room. The color, a bold terracotta, was nothing like the safe beige Gordon had insisted on in our old house. Have you seen the latest property listings? Camila asked, rolling paint onto the walls. The houses they used for their parties are being converted into women's shelters. The Justice Department approved it this morning. Good, I said firmly. Something positive should come from all this. Turner's phone rang. He stepped out to take the call, returning with a satisfied smile. That was the prosecutor, he announced. Gordon and Xavier took plea deals. They're looking at significant time. The others too. How long? Jessica asked quietly. 5 to 7 years. Plus restitution to all affected parties. Maya raised her champagne glass. To karma. To friendship, Annabelle added. To new beginnings, Jessica chimed in. To executive decisions, I finished, clinking my glass with theirs. As the evening wore on, we painted and planned. Jessica talked about the support group she'd started for women in similar situations. Camila shared ideas for a real estate advocacy program. Maya and Annabelle discussed their upcoming wedding. You know what's funny? I said, stepping back to admire our work. Gordon always said I was bad at making decisions, that I needed his guidance. And now look who's guiding who, Camila grinned. My phone buzzed one final time. An email from the Justice Department. Victim restitution program, first payment processed. What will you do with it? Turner asked. I looked around at my new home, at the family I'd chosen, at the life I'd rebuilt. I'm thinking of starting a foundation, I said, for women who need help getting out of bad situations, legal aid, housing assistance, that sort of thing. Count me in, Jessica said immediately. Me too, Camila added. Us three, Maya said, hugging Annabelle. Turner pulled out his business card. You'll need a good lawyer. I looked at the newly painted wall, at our group photo hanging proudly in the center. The terracotta color reminded me of sunrise, fitting for this new chapter. You know what Gordon used to say about sunrise? I picked up my paint roller again. That it was just the same sun, different day. And what do you say? Annabelle asked. I dipped the roller in paint, adding another stroke to my fresh start. I say it's a new sun, a new day, and this time, I'm the one making the executive decisions. The room filled with laughter and agreement, the sound echoing off newly painted walls that would never hide secrets or shelter lies. Just truth, justice, and the family I'd found along the way.
I never thought I'd be grateful for the day my husband left me for my best friend, but life has a way of surprising you. The memory is still crystal clear. Anton's cologne lingering in our bedroom as he packed his bags, while I stood in the doorway, clutching a crumpled receipt I'd found in his jacket pocket, a reservation for 2 at La Maison, our special place. Except this time, it wasn't meant for me. My name is Jacqueline, and this is how I learned to turn betrayal into triumph. Jackie, we need to talk, Anton had said that morning, his voice unusually stern. I should have known something was wrong when he made coffee. He never made coffee. About the receipt, I asked, watching his face pale. Or about the fact that you've been sleeping with Yara? The mug in his hand trembled slightly. How did you find out? Well, when your husband suddenly starts working late every Tuesday and Thursday, and your best friend cancels your weekly lunch dates on the same days, it doesn't take a genius to connect the dots. He set the mug down, coffee sloshing over the rim. I didn't mean for this to happen, I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. Really? You didn't mean to sleep with my best friend? What, did you trip and fall into her bed? Jackie, please. Don't Jackie me. How long? 6 months, he whispered. The truth hit me like a physical blow. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of fake smiles, of Yara hugging me and asking about my marriage while sleeping with my husband behind my back. I'm moving out, Anton said, already heading for the stairs. Yara and we want to be together properly. I followed him upstairs, watching as he methodically packed away 12 years of our marriage into 2 suitcases. Does this make you feel better? I asked. Doing it properly? He paused, holding one of his expensive suits. We never meant to hurt you. That's funny because it hurts like hell. My phone buzzed. A message from Yara. I'm so sorry. I hope someday you can forgive us both. I threw the phone across the room, watching it crack against the wall. The sound made Anton jump. I'll send someone for the rest of my things, he said, zipping up his bags. The divorce papers will come through my lawyer. As he headed for the door, I called out, Wait. He turned, hope flickering across his face. That watch I gave you for our 10th anniversary, the one you're wearing, take it off. Jackie, take it off. He removed it slowly, placing it on the hallway table. I picked it up, feeling its weight in my hand. You know what the inscription says? Time has only made us stronger. Funny how time actually showed me what a fool I've been. After he left, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the half-drunk coffee he'd abandoned. The house felt enormous and empty, echoing with memories I suddenly couldn't trust. Photos on the walls mocked me. Happy couples, friendly gatherings, Yara as my maid of honor at our wedding. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Ruby, my college friend who'd recently moved back to town. "I came as soon as I saw your text," she said, wrapping me in a tight hug. "What do you need? Ice cream? Wine? An alibi?" For the first time that day, I laughed genuinely. "All of the above?" We sat on my kitchen floor, sharing a bottle of Merlot and a pint of chocolate ice cream. "You know what the worst part is?" I said, licking my spoon. "I built my whole life around them. My best friend and my husband. I don't even know who I am without them." Ruby topped up my wine glass. "Then maybe it's time to find out." "What do you mean?" "Remember that idea you had in college? The natural skincare line? You were so passionate about it before Anton convinced you to take that corporate job instead." I blinked, memories flooding back. "That was just a dream." "Maybe it's time to make it reality," Ruby said, her eyes sparkling. "You've got your savings, your business degree, and now you've got nothing holding you back." I stood up suddenly, wobbling slightly from the wine. Walking to my home office, I pulled out an old notebook from the bottom drawer. Inside were formulas, sketches, and plans I'd made years ago. "You know what?" I said, flipping through the pages, feeling a spark of excitement for the first time in hours. "Maybe you're right. Maybe this isn't the end of my story." Ruby raised her glass. "To new beginnings?" I raised mine in return, a plan already forming in my mind. "To rising from the ashes." 3 months after Anton walked out, I stood in my converted garage, surrounded by dozens of small glass bottles and the sweet scent of essential oils. Ruby perched on a stool nearby, typing furiously on her laptop. "Phoenix Rise Beauty, because every woman deserves a second chance at radiance," she read aloud. "How's that for the tagline?" I smiled, carefully measuring drops of rosehip oil into my latest batch. "It's perfect, though I'm still not sure about using my personal story as a marketing angle." "Trust me," Ruby said, spinning her laptop around. "Your story is what makes this authentic. Look at these responses to our test campaign." The screen showed comments from women across the country. "Finally, someone who gets it. Love that this brand stands for something real." "Where can I pre-order?" The doorbell interrupted our discussion. Through the garage window, I spotted a courier with an official-looking envelope. "I'll get it," Ruby offered, but I shook my head. "No, I need to face whatever this is." The envelope contained divorce papers, but tucked inside was a handwritten note from Anton. "I miss you. Can we talk?" My hand shook as I walked back to the garage. Ruby took one look at my face and knew. "The papers came?" I nodded, dropping them on the workbench, along with a note saying he misses me. "That manipulative piece of—" "It doesn't matter," I cut her off, returning to my oils. "I've got more important things to focus on, like this formula that still isn't quite right." Ruby grabbed my hands, forcing me to stop. "Jackie, you're allowed to be angry." "I'm not angry," I said, pulling away. "I'm busy, there's a difference." "Really? Because you've been measuring that same oil 4 times now." I looked down at the overflowing bottle and swore. "Fine, I'm angry. I'm furious. Happy now?" "Actually, yes," Ruby grinned. "Anger can be productive. Channel it into the business." She was right. Over the next few hours, we refined the formula until it was perfect. A healing blend that made my skin glow despite the stress and sleepless nights. "We need to get this in front of people," Ruby declared. "I know someone who runs a local wellness market. Let's set up a booth next weekend." The market was bustling when we arrived early Saturday morning. Our booth looked professional but personal, photos of my transformation journey subtly displayed alongside our products. "Remember," Ruby coached, "when people ask about the brand, be honest. Your vulnerability is your strength." The first few customers trickled in slowly, but word spread quickly about the Miracle Glow Serum. By noon, we had a steady stream of interested buyers. "This scent is amazing," one woman said, testing the serum. "What's your story?" I took a deep breath. 3 months ago, my husband left me for my best friend. Instead of letting it destroy me, I decided to create something beautiful from the pain. Her eyes widened. "My God, the same thing happened to my sister. She's still devastated." "Give her this," I said, handing her a sample. "Tell her it gets better." By day's end, we'd sold out of everything and collected a list of pre-orders. As we packed up, Ruby's phone buzzed. "Jackie," she said slowly, "you need to see this." It was an Instagram post from Yara, a photo of her and Anton in front of a sold sign, captioned, "New house, new beginnings. Rue blessed." I stared at their smiling faces, my stomach churning. They looked happy, settled, while I was starting over from scratch. "Don't let them get to you," Ruby warned. "Look what you've accomplished today." I gestured at our empty booth. "This? It's nothing compared to their new house." "No, it's better. It's yours. You built this from nothing but determination and talent." As if on cue, my phone dinged with an email notification. "Ruby," I whispered, "look at this." A major beauty retailer wanted to schedule a meeting about carrying Phoenix Rise in their stores. "Still think this is nothing?" Ruby asked, grinning. I read the email again, feeling something shift inside me. "You know what? You're right. Let them have their house. I'm building an empire." Back home, I finally opened the divorce papers. Instead of feeling devastated, I felt lighter. I signed each page with steady hands, then sealed the envelope. "To new beginnings?" Ruby asked, pulling out a bottle of champagne. "To Phoenix Rise," I corrected, smiling as I heard my phone buzz with another order notification. "And to Karma, because she's just getting started." Little did I know how true those words would prove to be. 5 years can change everything. I stood in my office at Phoenix Rise headquarters, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in shades of gold. The view still took my breath away, even after 2 years in this building. "Jackie," Ruby burst through the door, tablet in hand. "Have you seen the numbers from last quarter?" I was just about to. "We've doubled our projections." She thrust the tablet at me. "The new healing cream line is outselling everything else in its category." I scrolled through the report, a smile spreading across my face. "Send these to Nathan. He'll want to see them before tomorrow's board meeting." "Already done." Ruby flopped onto my office couch. "Speaking of Nathan, he asked about that mysterious investor again. The one who keeps trying to schedule meetings. Tell him what I always say. We're not interested in outside investment." "But Jackie, they're offering—" A knock at the door interrupted us. My assistant Maria poked her head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent." "I don't have any appointments." "It's Yara." The name hit me like a physical blow. Ruby jumped to her feet. "Want me to tell her to get lost?" "No," I said, smoothing my skirt. "Send her in." Yara looked different. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup. Instead, she wore jeans and a plain sweater, her face drawn and tired. "Jackie," she said softly, "you look amazing." "What do you want, Yara?" She twisted her hands together. "I know I have no right to be here, but we need your help. Anton and I, we're in trouble." Ruby snorted. "That's rich." "What kind of trouble?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Financial trouble. The housing market crashed, and Anton's real estate business." She swallowed hard. "We're about to lose everything." "And you thought of me because you're successful, because despite what we did to you, you've thrived." Tears welled in her eyes. "Because I remember how kind you used to be." "Used to be," I repeated. "Before my husband and best friend betrayed me. I know we hurt you." "Hurt me?" I laughed. "You destroyed my life. Or at least you tried to." "Please," she whispered. "Just talk to Anton. He's outside." Of course he was. I walked to my office door and opened it. Sure enough, there he stood, looking older and considerably less polished than the man who'd walked out 5 years ago. "Hello, Jackie," he said. "It's Jacqueline," I corrected. "Only friends call me Jackie." He flinched. "Right, Jacqueline. You've done well for yourself." "I have, no thanks to you." Ruby cleared her throat. "Should I call security?" I considered it for a moment, then had a better idea. "No, let's hear them out." We moved to the conference room where Anton laid out their situation. Bad investments, mounting debt, and a market crash had wiped them out. They were 3 months away from bankruptcy. "We're not asking for a handout," Anton said, "but maybe a partnership. Your brand is growing and I still have contacts." "The contacts that are currently avoiding your calls?" I interrupted. He had the grace to look embarrassed. "We can still bring value to your company." I stood up, walking to the window. Below, the Phoenix Rise logo glowed against the darkening sky. 5 years of hard work, of rebuilding myself from nothing, of proving them wrong. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "Really?" Yara's face lit up. "I'll have my team review your situation and get back to you in a week." After they left, Ruby exploded. "You can't seriously be considering helping them." I smiled, a plan already forming in my mind. "Remember what you told me 5 years ago, about anger being productive?" "Yeah. Well, I'm about to be very productive." I picked up my phone. "Get me Nathan. We need to talk about that mysterious investor." Later that night, I sat in my home office, reviewing old photos on my laptop. There was one from my wedding day, Yara adjusting my veil, Anton waiting at the altar. I'd kept it all these years, a reminder of what I'd lost. Now, looking at it, I saw something different, a reminder of what I'd gained: strength, independence, power. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Did some digging on Anton's business. You're going to want to see this." I smiled, closing the laptop. "Time has only made us stronger," I whispered, echoing the words from that long-ago watch inscription. But this time, I was the one who was stronger, and they were about to find out just how much. Nathan spread the documents across my desk, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a highlighted section. "Anton's been moving money between shell companies for years." "Is it illegal?" I asked, scanning the papers. "Not technically, but it's sketchy as hell." Nathan leaned back in his chair. "He's been using these companies to hide assets. The question is, from whom?" Ruby, who'd been unusually quiet, spoke up from her corner. "From his investors, obviously, the ones he screwed over." "Exactly," Nathan said. "And here's where it gets interesting. One of those shell companies, it's still active, and it's sitting on a decent amount of money." I raised an eyebrow. "How decent?" $2 million, give or take," Ruby whistled. "So much for being broke." "Oh, they're broke," Nathan corrected. "This money is tied up in legal knots. Anton can't touch it without exposing his whole scheme." I drummed my fingers on the desk. "But someone else could." Nathan's eyes twinkled. "With the right paperwork and the right pressure, absolutely." The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Jacqueline? Mr. Anton and Ms. Yara are here for their appointment." "Perfect timing," I smiled. "Send them in." They looked even more desperate than last week. Anton's shirt was wrinkled, and Yara's hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Thank you for seeing us again," Anton said, taking a seat. I gestured to the papers on my desk. "I've been reviewing your situation." "And?" Yara leaned forward eagerly. "And I'm willing to help." I paused, watching their faces light up. "On certain conditions." "Anything," Anton said quickly. Too quickly. "First, I want full transparency. Every account, every transaction, every business deal from the past 5 years." Anton's face paled slightly. "That's a lot of paperwork." "Is it?" I asked innocently. "I thought you kept good records." "We do, it's just..." "Just what, Anton? Is there something you don't want me to see?" Yara touched his arm. "Anton, we have to tell her." "Tell me what?" Anton loosened his collar. Some of our business dealings were complicated. You mean like the shell company holding $2 million? The color drained from his face. How did you... I have good lawyers, I said simply. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign over control of all your business interests to Phoenix Rise. All of them, Yara squeaked. In exchange, you'll both receive consulting positions with the company, modest salaries, health insurance, the works. That's generous, Anton said carefully. I'm not finished. You'll also sign an agreement giving me full authority to handle any complicated situations that might arise. And if we refuse, I smiled, then I make a few phone calls to your investors. I'm sure they'd be very interested in knowing where their money really went. The room fell silent. Anton and Yara exchanged looks. We need time to think about it, Anton said finally. You have until tomorrow morning. The papers will be ready at 9. After they left, Ruby slow-clapped. That was beautiful. But what's your real plan? I turned to Nathan. How long would it take to transfer that $2 million to a charitable trust? With the right paperwork, a few days. And the women's shelter downtown, the one that helped me when I was at my lowest, they're still looking for funding, right? Ruby's eyes widened. Oh my God, you're going to give Anton's hidden money to the shelter. Yes. I picked up the phone. But first, I need to make a call to our mysterious investor. I think it's time they met our new business partners. Later that evening, I visited the shelter. Rosalind, the manager, greeted me with a warm hug. Jacqueline, we missed you at last month's fundraiser. I know, I'm sorry, but I might have something to make up for it. I handed her a folder. How would you feel about a $2 million endowment? Her jaw dropped. Are you serious? Consider it Karma's donation. I smiled. Sometimes, justice takes the scenic route. Walking back to my car, I received a text from Ruby. Anton's been making calls all afternoon. Sounds desperate. Good, I thought. Let him feel what desperation tastes like. Let him understand what it means to have your future in someone else's hands. Tomorrow at 9, they'd sign those papers, thinking they were saving themselves. They had no idea they were actually signing their karma check. And I was going to make sure it cleared. 9 o'clock sharp, and my office was a battlefield of tension. Anton and Yara sat across from me, while Nathan quietly arranged documents on the conference table. Before we sign, Anton said, his voice strained, I want to know who this mystery investor is. Right on cue, the door opened. A tall woman in an impeccable suit walked in, and I watched the blood drain from Anton's face. Hello, Anton, she said coolly. Remember me? Victoria, he whispered. You know each other? I asked innocently, though I knew exactly who she was. One of Anton's biggest investors from 3 years ago. You could say that, Victoria replied, taking a seat. Anton lost $2 million of my money in what he called a guaranteed investment opportunity. Yara's head snapped toward Anton. You never told me about this. It wasn't relevant, he muttered. Wasn't relevant. Victoria laughed. You disappeared with my money, changed your phone number, and moved offices without a forwarding address. I'd say that's pretty relevant. I cleared my throat. Victoria has agreed to become a major stakeholder in Phoenix Rise. She'll be overseeing all our new acquisitions. You planned this, Anton accused, his fingers gripping the armrests. Actually, you planned it, I corrected. Every shell company, every hidden account. You created this maze. I'm just walking you through it. Nathan slid the contracts forward. Shall we begin? The next hour was excruciating for Anton and Yara as they signed away control of everything they owned. With each signature, Victoria's smile grew wider. There's one more thing, I said as they reached the final page. The women's shelter downtown needs board members for their charitable trust. You've both been nominated. A shelter? Yara asked. The same one that helped me put my life back together after you two destroyed it. I met her eyes. Consider it community service. This is blackmail, Anton growled. No, this is karma. But if you'd prefer, we could discuss this with the SEC instead. More signatures, more silent fury. When it was done, Nathan gathered the papers while Victoria stood. "I'll see you both at Monday's board meeting," she said. "Don't be late." After they left, Ruby burst in. "Tell me I didn't miss the whole thing." "Just the paperwork," I said. "The real show starts Monday." "Jackie," Nathan's voice was serious, "are you sure about this? Revenge can be a double-edged sword." "This isn't just revenge," I replied. "This is justice. They hurt people, Nathan. Not just me. Victoria, other investors, everyone they stepped on to get ahead. And the shelter angle is legitimate. They need oversight, and Anton and Yara need humility. Besides," I smiled, "wait until they find out about the mandatory volunteer hours." Later that afternoon, Yara showed up alone at my office. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Just us?" I gestured to the chair. She sat, looking smaller than ever. "I know you hate us," she began. "I don't hate you," I interrupted. "Hate requires energy I'd rather spend elsewhere. I just want you to understand consequences. By destroying us? By making you rebuild, like I had to." I leaned forward. "The shelter saved my life, Yara. When you and Anton left, I was broken. They helped me find purpose again." "I didn't know." "Of course you didn't. You were too busy playing house with my husband." I softened my tone. "But now you have a chance to help other women find their strength. Don't waste it." She wiped her eyes. "Anton's been lying to me. About Victoria, about the money. I feel so stupid." "Then learn from it. Monday morning, you start fresh. How you handle this determines your future." After she left, I called Rosalind at the shelter. "The papers are signed," I told her. "You'll have your funding by next week." "And our new board members?" "They'll be there Monday. Trust me, they're motivated to make this work." "You're either an angel or a genius," Rosalind laughed. "Neither," I said, watching the sunset paint the sky phoenix red. "Just someone who believes in poetic justice." My phone buzzed with the text from Ruby. "Drinks tonight to celebrate?" I typed back, "Rain check. Meeting Nathan to go over Monday's presentation. Some might call it overkill, but I believed in being thorough. Monday would change everything, not just for Anton and Yara, but for every woman who would find shelter and support thanks to their hidden millions. Sometimes karma needs a little help, and sometimes the best revenge isn't serving it cold, it's serving it with a side of redemption. Monday morning arrived with an unexpected twist. Ruby burst into my office before the board meeting, her face flushed with urgency. "We have a problem," she said, tossing a USB drive onto my desk. "Our IT team intercepted some emails between Anton and his lawyer." I plugged in the drive, scanning the messages quickly. "Son of a... They're planning to contest the contract," Ruby continued. "Claiming coercion and emotional distress. His lawyer thinks they have a case." Nathan appeared in the doorway. "That's not all. Victoria just called. Anton reached out to her yesterday, offering to settle their old debt privately. He's trying to outmaneuver us," I said, standing up. "Where are they now?" "In the lobby," Ruby replied, looking way too smug for people who signed away their assets 3 days ago. I grabbed my phone, sending a quick text to Rosalind. "Execute Plan B now." The boardroom was tense when I walked in. Anton and Yara sat together, both wearing satisfied smiles. Victoria sat opposite them, her face unreadable. "Before we begin," Anton announced, "I have something to say." "Actually," I interrupted, "I believe Rosalind has the floor first." I gestured to the door where Rosalind stood, carrying a thick folder. "Who's she?" Anton demanded. "The director of New Beginnings Women's Shelter," I said, "and as of Friday, the legal executor of your hidden assets." The color drained from Anton's face. "What?" Rosalind opened her folder. "Mr. Anton, that shell company you created, the one holding $2 million, it's now legally transferred to our charitable trust. The paperwork was processed first thing Friday morning." "That's impossible," Anton sputtered. "You can't—" "Actually, we can," Nathan interjected. "You signed over full authority to handle any complicated situations. Remember? Yara turned to Anton, her voice shaking. You said that money was gone. The transfer is ironclad, Rosalind continued. Our lawyers made sure of it. And since it's now charitable trust money, any attempt to contest it would trigger an automatic IRS audit. Anton jumped to his feet. This is theft. No, Victoria said coldly. This is justice. That money, it came from investors like me, people you deceived. Now it's going to help people you hurt. Yara, he pleaded, tell them this isn't fair. But Yara was staring at the shelter's financial reports Rosalind had distributed. 200 women helped last year, she whispered. 50 children. And with this funding, we can double those numbers, Rosalind smiled. Thanks to your contribution. Anton lunged for the papers, but security was faster. 2 guards appeared at the door. You planned this from the start, he accused, pointing at me. You manipulative. Careful, I warned. Everything in this room is being recorded. For the board's records, of course. Yara stood up slowly. I want to see it. See what? Anton asked. The shelter. The women were helping. She turned to Rosalind. Can I? Of course, Rosalind replied. We're having an open house this afternoon. You can meet some of our residents. She's not going anywhere. Anton grabbed Yara's arm. She yanked it away. Yes, I am. And you're going to let me, or I'll tell Victoria exactly where her investment money really went. The room fell silent. Anton's face contorted with rage, then defeat. Fine, he spat. Go play saint with your new friends, but don't come crying to me when... When what? I interrupted. When she realizes there's more to life than covering up your lies. When she discovers her own strength. Ruby cleared her throat. Should I call the police, or will security be enough to escort Mr. Anton out? He left without another word, the guards following close behind. Yara lingered after the others filed out. I should have seen it, she said quietly. All the lies, the manipulation. I was so blind. Love can do that, I replied, or what we think is love. The shelter. Do you really think I could help? I think you understand what it's like to lose yourself to someone else's desires. That understanding could help a lot of women. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you, not for the revenge part, but for showing me a way to make something good out of all this. After she left with Rosalind, Ruby perched on my desk. Well, that was anticlimactic. I expected more fireworks. Sometimes the quietest explosions cause the most damage, I said, watching Anton's retreating figure through the window. Besides, this isn't over. No? I smiled, picking up my phone. The press release about Phoenix Rise's new charitable initiative goes out in an hour. Wait until Anton sees his name in the headlines. Sometimes karma doesn't need a big show. Sometimes it just needs the truth to come to light. The press conference room buzzed with energy. Reporters filled every seat, cameras flashing as I took my place at the podium. Ruby stood to my right, Victoria to my left, with Rosalind and, surprisingly, Yara seated in the front row. Thank you all for coming, I began. Today, Phoenix Rise is proud to announce our largest charitable initiative to date, a $5 million endowment to New Beginnings Women's Shelter. The room erupted with questions. I held up my hand for silence. This initiative was made possible through a unique partnership. Would Anton Dawson please join me at the podium? The room fell silent. Every head turned toward the back, where Anton stood frozen, having just walked in. He'd clearly come to disrupt the proceedings, but now found himself in the spotlight. Anton, I prompted, would you like to tell everyone about your generous contribution? He strode forward, fury evident in every step. This is a setup, he hissed as he reached the podium. Is it? I turned to the reporters. $2 million of this endowment comes directly from Mr. Dawson's previously undisclosed assets. Assets that, until recently, were hidden from his investors and the IRS. The camera flashes intensified. Anton gripped the podium, knuckles white. That's a lie, he said into the microphone. Victoria stepped forward. Is it? I have the paper trail right here. She held up a folder. "Would you like me to share it with these reporters?" A journalist in the front row stood up. "Mr. Dawson, is it true that you lost millions in investor funds through shell companies?" Another reporter jumped in. "Are there other hidden accounts we should know about?" Anton's face turned red. "No comment. This is all a manipulation by my ex-wife." "Your ex-wife?" Yara's voice cut through the chaos as she stood up. "Is trying to help people. Unlike you, who only helps yourself." The room went dead quiet. Anton stared at her in disbelief. "Yara, what are you doing?" "The right thing, finally." She turned to the reporters. "I've spent the past week at New Beginnings, seeing firsthand what this money can do. Women and children who've lost everything, just like I lost myself with you, Anton." More cameras flashed. More questions flew. Anton backed away from the podium, but there was nowhere to hide. "If you'll direct your attention to the screens," I continued smoothly, "you'll see our comprehensive plan for the endowment funds." The presentation played, showing before and after photos of the shelter, stories of women who'd rebuilt their lives, and detailed financial projections. But the reporter's eyes kept darting between Anton's crumbling facade and Yara's quiet dignity. "Ms. Jacqueline," a reporter called out, "what inspired this initiative?" "Sometimes," I said, looking directly at Anton, "the best way to heal from betrayal is to turn it into something beautiful. Every woman deserves a second chance at happiness, at success, at life." "This isn't over," Anton muttered as he stormed toward the exit. "Actually, it is," Victoria called after him. "The SEC would love to hear from you, by the way. They're very interested in those shell companies." The door slammed behind him. In the ensuing chaos of questions and camera flashes, Yara made her way to the podium. "I'd like to announce something else," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "I'm joining New Beginnings as their new outreach coordinator. My experience, my mistakes, they can help other women avoid the same traps." Ruby squeezed my arm. "Did you know about this?" I shook my head, watching as Yara handled questions with growing confidence. The broken woman from last week was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone real. After the press conference, Rosalind pulled me aside. "You've started something bigger than revenge here," she said. "This morning, we received 3 calls from other women wanting to share their stories, wanting to help." "Sometimes karma works in mysterious ways," I replied, watching as Yara gave an interview to a local news station. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "SEC just called. They want to talk to Anton tomorrow morning." Another buzz. "Breaking news. Local businessman under investigation for financial fraud." And another. "Phoenix Rise stock jumps 15%, following charitable announcement." Ruby appeared with champagne. "To karma?" "To second chances," I corrected, raising my glass. "And to women who rise." Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the city. Somewhere out there, Anton was facing the consequences of his actions. But in here, surrounded by the positive energy of transformation and hope, I finally felt free. The phoenix had risen from the ashes, and this time, she'd brought an entire sisterhood with her. The autumn breeze carried the sound of laughter from the shelter's garden, where dozens of women gathered for the grand reopening ceremony. I stood at the back, watching Yara lead a group tour through the newly renovated facilities. "And here's our Career Development Center," she explained, gesturing to a bright room filled with computers. "Every woman deserves the chance to rebuild her life on her own terms." Ruby appeared beside me, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Have you seen the morning news?" "About Anton. Hard to miss." The headlines had been everywhere. "Local businessman pleads guilty to financial fraud." Anton had taken a plea deal, avoiding jail time, but accepting hefty fines and community service. His reputation was in tatters, his business contacts gone. "Jacqueline," a soft voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned to find Maria, one of the shelter's residents, holding a small gift bag. "We wanted you to have this." Inside was a handmade phoenix pendant, crafted from copper wire and colored glass. We all made one in art therapy, Maria explained. It reminds us that we can rise from anything. Before I could respond, Nathan rushed over. You need to see this, he said, holding up his tablet. On the screen was a social media post from Anton. To everyone I've hurt through my actions, I'm sorry. Especially to Jacqueline and Yara. You turned my biggest mistakes into something meaningful. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm grateful for the lesson. Wow, Ruby whispered. Hell really did freeze over. Victoria joined our group, reading over Nathan's shoulder. Too little, too late. Maybe not, I said, watching Rosalind lead another group of women through the garden. Sometimes late is better than never. The ceremony continued with speeches and testimonials. When it was my turn to speak, I looked out at the crowd, survivors, supporters, journalists, and even a few familiar faces from my past. 5 years ago, I stood in these gardens, broken and lost. Today, I stand here whole, surrounded by an army of phoenixes. I touch the pendant at my neck. We're not defined by who hurt us, but by how we rise above that hurt. And we rise higher when we rise together. After the ceremony, Yara pulled me aside. There's someone who wants to meet you. She led me to a young woman sitting alone in the garden. This is Lily. She left her husband last week after finding out about his affair with her cousin. The woman looked up, tears in her eyes. Yara told me your story, how you turned your pain into power. I need to know how. I sat beside her, taking her trembling hands in mine. First, you need to know something. This isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning. But it hurts so much. Pain is fuel, I said, remembering my own darkest days. The trick is choosing what to do with it. Ruby appeared with a Phoenix Rise gift bag. Maybe start with this. Our healing serum works wonders on crying-induced puffy eyes. Trust me, I helped develop it. Lily managed a small laugh, and something in my heart settled. This was why everything had happened, not for revenge, but for moments like this. Later, as the sun set over the garden, I found myself alone by the fountain. The water sparkled with coins, wishes made by women dreaming of better tomorrows. Making a wish? Nathan asked, joining me. I don't need to anymore. I pulled out a familiar object from my purse, the watch I'd taken back from Anton years ago. But someone else might. I handed it to Nathan. Have it engraved with "Time heals all wounds" and add it to the shelter's fundraising auction. Poetic, he smiled. You know, when you first told me your revenge plan, I thought you were making a mistake. But this... He gestured to the thriving shelter, the laughing women, the new beginnings blooming everywhere. This is better than revenge. It's justice, Ruby added, appearing with Yara. Sweet, constructive justice. The four of us stood there, watching the last rays of sunlight paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. A phoenix sunset, I thought. My phone buzzed with a message from Rosalind. 3 more women just checked in. They saw the news coverage. They're ready to rise. I smiled, touching the phoenix pendant at my neck. Some people might call it karma, others might call it justice. But standing there, surrounded by the evidence of pain transformed into purpose, I knew what it really was. It was hope, rising from the ashes of despair, spreading its wings to shelter others in their darkest hours. And that was the sweetest victory of all.
The letter from the IRS sat on my kitchen counter like a ticking bomb. $347,000 in unpaid taxes. My hands trembled as I read the notice again, hoping the numbers would somehow rearrange themselves into something less catastrophic. I'm Summer, and until this morning, I thought I was doing pretty well for a 28-year-old marketing manager. Decent apartment, reliable Honda Civic, and enough savings to treat myself to occasional weekend getaways. But now I was staring at a tax bill that exceeded my annual salary 5 times over. This has to be a mistake, I muttered, grabbing my phone. My father answered on the second ring. Princess, what a lovely surprise. Dad, I need you to explain something. I cut him off, my voice sharper than intended. I just got a notice from the IRS about unpaid taxes on income I've never seen. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. The pause that followed lasted a beat too long. "Oh, sweetheart, that must be a mistake. Why don't you bring it over and we'll sort it out?" Something in his tone made my stomach clench. I grabbed my keys and the letter, already heading for the door. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. The drive to my parents' suburban home felt endless. When I arrived, Dad was waiting in his usual spot, the leather armchair by the window where he'd read me stories as a kid. But today, his warm smile seemed practiced, rehearsed. "Show me the letter," he said, extending his hand. I watched his face as he read it, noting how his expression didn't register any surprise. "Well?" I prompted. "Summer, sweetie, sit down." He gestured to the couch. "There's something we need to discuss." "I'd rather stand." He sighed, setting the letter aside. "Remember when you turned 18 and I had you sign some papers for your college fund?" The memory hit me like a punch to the gut. Those weren't just college fund documents, were they? "I needed to protect our family's assets," he said, his voice taking on that familiar authoritative tone he used when explaining adult things to me. "The market was unstable and I had to make some strategic decisions." "Strategic decisions?" I interrupted. "You used my identity to hide money from the IRS?" "Lower your voice," he hissed, glancing toward the kitchen where Mom was probably pretending not to listen. "This isn't as simple as you're making it sound. Everything I did was to secure our family's future. Your future." I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my contacts. "What are you doing?" he asked, tension creeping into his voice. "Calling Elizabeth." "Our family lawyer? Don't be dramatic, Summer. We can handle this internally." "Handle what internally?" Mom appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "What's going on?" Dad stood up, approaching me with his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Nothing that concerns you, Jessica. Summer's just confused about some paperwork." "Confused?" I laughed, the sound brittle and harsh. "Dad used my identity to hide money from the government, and now I'm on the hook for hundreds of thousands in taxes. Is that clear enough for everyone?" Mom's dish towel dropped to the floor. "Terrence, what is she talking about?" "Don't worry about it," he said quickly. "Summer's overreacting. I'll take care of everything." "Like you've been taking care of things for the past 10 years?" I shot back. "Using my name, my social security number, my identity?" He grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. "Princess, please, let's discuss this rationally. I'm your father. Everything I've done has been for you." I jerked away from his grip. "Don't touch me, and don't call me princess." "If you walk out that door and involve outsiders in family business," he warned, his voice dropping low, "you'll regret it." I stopped at the threshold, turning to face him one last time. "No, Dad. The only thing I regret is trusting you." As I drove away, my phone buzzed with messages from both parents. I ignored them, instead pulling into a coffee shop parking lot and dialing a different number. "Michael, it's Summer. Remember how you always said you owed me one for covering for you in 10th grade? I need your help with something big. How much do you know about investigating financial fraud?" The line crackled with his response, and for the first time since opening that letter, I felt something other than panic and betrayal. I felt purpose. My father had spent years building his house of lies, using my identity as the foundation. Now it was time to tear it down, brick by brick, until nothing remained but the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. "He did what?" Parker nearly choked on his coffee. We were sitting in his apartment where I'd fled after leaving my parents' house. The evening light cast long shadows across his living room as I showed him the IRS notice. "Used my identity to hide money," I repeated, pacing back and forth. And the worst part? He acted like I was being unreasonable for getting upset about it. Parker set down his mug and caught my hand as I passed, pulling me onto the couch beside him. "Have you talked to a lawyer yet?" "I called Elizabeth. You know, the family attorney. She's meeting me tomorrow morning." I leaned into his shoulder, exhausted. "And Michael's coming too. He thinks there might be a story here." "Michael from high school? The journalist?" Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. The 20th message from my father since I'd left. I switched it to silent without reading it. "You should see these texts," I said, handing Parker my phone. He's switching between threatening me and guilt-tripping me every other message. Parker scrolled through them, his frown deepening. "Remember everything I've sacrificed for you. Don't destroy this family. Jesus, Summer, this is manipulation 101. A knock at the door made me jump. Michael stood there, laptop bag slung over his shoulder, looking exactly like the eager investigative journalist he'd become. "Sorry I'm late," he said, pulling out his laptop, "but I've been doing some preliminary digging. Summer, have you ever heard of a company called Meridian Ventures?" I shook my head. "Well, according to public records, you're listed as its CEO." "I'm what?" I grabbed his laptop, staring at the document he'd pulled up. There was my name, clear as day, on company registration papers dated back to my 18th birthday. "There's more," Michael continued, pulling up another window. "The company has been involved in dozens of real estate transactions over the past decade, all using your name, your social security number." Parker leaned forward. "How much money are we talking about?" "Based on what I've found so far?" Michael grimaced. "Millions." My stomach lurched. "I think I'm going to be sick." "We need to document everything," Michael said, his journalist instincts kicking in. "Every paper you signed, every conversation you remember. Elizabeth can help with the legal angle, but we need to build a solid case." "What about your mom?" Parker asked. "Does she know anything about this?" I thought about her shocked face when I'd revealed Dad's deception. "No, I don't think so." She looked genuinely surprised. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Peyton, Dad's secretary. "Your father is very concerned. Please call him. He only wants to make things right." Make things right? I showed the message to Michael. "He's using his secretary to pressure me now?" "Actually," Michael said slowly, "Peyton might be useful. How well do you know her?" "We've talked at company events. She's always been nice, but she's totally loyal to Dad." "Maybe too loyal," Parker suggested. "She might know where the bodies are buried, so to speak." I stood up, energy suddenly coursing through me. "You're right, and I know exactly how to approach her. Dad's hosting that charity gala next week, the one he does every year. Peyton always handles the details." Michael's eyes lit up. "Perfect opportunity to do some digging. I can get press credentials." "No," I interrupted. "I need to play this carefully. I'll go alone, act like the dutiful daughter trying to make peace. Peyton tends to talk when she's stressed, and organizing these events always stresses her out." Parker looked worried. "Are you sure you can face your father?" "I have to." I squared my shoulders. "Besides, I learned from the best, didn't I? Dad taught me everything about putting on a good show for the public." Michael was already typing. "I'll keep digging into Meridian Ventures. There has to be a paper trail somewhere." "And I'll go with you to meet Elizabeth tomorrow," Parker added, squeezing my hand. Looking at them both, Parker with his unwavering support and Michael with his determined focus, I felt stronger than I had all day. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by something harder, more focused. "One more thing," I said, picking up my phone. "I need to respond to Dad's messages, something that'll keep him off balance until next week." I typed quickly. "Dad, I'm sorry I overreacted. You're right. We should handle this as a family. Give me a few days to process everything. I'll see you at the gala." The response was immediate. "That's my girl. We'll sort this out together, Princess." I showed the exchange to Michael and Parker. "And that's how you play the player." Michael whistled low. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." "Too late," I said, managing a small smile. "You already did in 10th grade. Why do you think you owe me one?" Elizabeth's office felt colder than I remembered. She sat across from me, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed the documents Michael had gathered. "This is concerning," she said, setting down a stack of papers. "Your father's been thorough, I'll give him that. The way he's structured these companies, it's like a Russian nesting doll of fraud." "Can we prove it?" I asked, leaning forward. "With the right evidence, yes. But Summer," she removed her glasses, "you need to understand what you're getting into. Taking down Terrence won't be easy. He's got connections, resources." "And I've got the truth," I cut in. "Plus whatever's in that filing cabinet behind Peyton's desk." Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. "You've seen something?" "Not yet. But at last year's gala, I saw Dad practically dive for it when Peyton was showing me some old photos. He practically shoved me out of the office." My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Please talk to me. I don't understand what's happening." I ignored it as Elizabeth continued. "If there's documentation in that cabinet, we need it. But accessing it illegally could compromise everything." "Leave that to me," I said, standing up. "I should get going. I'm meeting Peyton for coffee in an hour." The coffee shop was crowded when I arrived. Peyton was already there, perfectly put together as always, a stack of gala planning documents spread across the table. Summer! She stood to hug me. I'm so glad you reached out. Your father's been worried sick. I know, I said, sliding into the seat across from her. I just needed time to process everything. The gala planning is probably a good distraction. Oh, absolutely. She brightened, pushing a folder toward me. I could use your help with the seating arrangements. Your father's been so distracted lately, he's barely looked at them. Distracted? I kept my tone casual. That's not like him. Peyton lowered her voice. Between us, he's been having a lot of closed-door meetings. Yesterday, he had me shredding documents for hours. My heart jumped, but I maintained my composure. Really? What kind of documents? I didn't look too closely, she said, but her expression suggested otherwise. But there was something about Meridian Ventures. Just then, her phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen. I should take this, she said, standing up. He's been calling constantly. As she walked away to answer, I noticed she'd left her tablet on the table. The screen was still unlocked, her email open. My fingers itched to grab it, but the risk was too high. Instead, I focused on what she'd said about the shredding. I pulled out my phone and texted Michael. Dad's destroying evidence. Need to move faster. Peyton returned, looking flustered. I'm so sorry, Summer, but I need to head back to the office. Your father needs some urgent files from the cabinet. The one behind your desk? I asked innocently. She nodded, already gathering her things. He's been in and out of those files all week. Listen, about the gala, can you stop by tomorrow? We really need to finalize these arrangements. Of course, I smiled. Same time as always? Perfect. And Summer? She paused, her expression softening. Whatever's going on with you and your father, he really does love you. I maintained my smile until she left, then immediately called Michael. Did you get my text? I asked when he answered. Yeah, but I've got something bigger. Remember those real estate transactions? I found a pattern. Every major purchase coincides with a large withdrawal from an account in your name. How large? The latest one was 2 weeks ago, $500,000. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. 2 weeks ago? That's when he asked me to sign those insurance documents for his estate planning. Which weren't insurance documents at all, I'm guessing. No, I said, my voice hardening. But tomorrow, I'm going to find out exactly what they were. Peyton just invited me to the office to work on gala planning. Summer, Michael's tone was warning. Be careful. If your father catches you. He won't, I interrupted, because he'll be at his weekly golf game. He never misses it. Appearances to maintain and all that. After hanging up, I sat there for a long moment, watching people come and go. Normal people, living normal lives, not discovering their fathers had been stealing their identities for a decade. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Mom. I found some strange papers in your father's study. Can we meet? This time, I responded, tomorrow afternoon. Don't tell Dad. The pieces were falling into place. But as I gathered my things to leave, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the coffee shop window. The woman staring back at me looked different somehow. Harder, more determined. Dad had taught me well about keeping up appearances. Now it was time to put those lessons to use. The office hallway stretched before me like a tunnel. Peyton was in the bathroom. Just 5 minutes, she'd chirped, leaving me alone with that filing cabinet and the thundering of my heart. I moved quickly, sliding open the drawer she'd accessed earlier. My fingers trembled as I snapped photos of everything that looked important. Contracts, bank statements, company registrations. All with my signature, but in different inks, different years. A sound in the hallway made me freeze. But it was just the cleaning crew, pushing their cart past the door. The bottom drawer was locked. Of course it was. That's where Dad had nearly panicked when I'd gotten close last year. I was about to give up when I noticed Peyton's keyring on her desk, half hidden under a gala seating chart. Come on, I muttered, trying keys with shaking hands. The fourth one clicked. Inside was a single manila envelope labeled Summer Original Documents. I opened it, and 18-year-old me stared back from a stack of papers. College fund documents, Dad had said. Looking at them now, with adult eyes, I could see what they really were. Power of attorney forms, company registrations, bank account authorizations, quick photos, then everything back exactly as I'd found it. I was just settling into my chair when Peyton returned. Sorry about that. She sat down, spreading out the gala papers. Now, about the seating arrangements. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Where are you? I've been waiting at the cafe. Shit, I'd completely forgotten about meeting her. Peyton, I'm so sorry. I stood up, gathering my things. I completely forgot I promised to meet Mom for coffee. Can we finish this tomorrow? Of course. Actually, she hesitated. Your father's been asking about you. He wants to know if you're still coming to dinner tonight. Wouldn't miss it, I lied smoothly. Tell him I'll be there at 7. I found Mom at our usual cafe, stirring her cold coffee with a distant look. I found something, she said without preamble, pulling papers from her bag. Bank statements, lots of them, all with your name, but with transactions I know you couldn't have made. I took the statements, my throat tight. How did you find these? Your father's been distracted lately, left his study door unlocked. She looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed. Summer, what has he done? I showed her the photos I'd just taken. As she scrolled through them, her hands started shaking. 20 years of marriage, she whispered, and I never knew. Mom, no, she cut me off. Don't try to protect me. I need to know everything. So I told her about the IRS notice, the fake companies, the millions hidden under my name. With each revelation, she seemed to shrink further into herself. I've been such a fool, she finally said. We both were. But now we can... My phone rang. Michael. Summer, he said without greeting. You need to see this. Can you come to my office now? I'm with Mom. Bring her. She should see this too. Michael's office was cluttered with papers and coffee cups. He barely looked up as we entered, focused on his computer screen. Remember those real estate transactions? He turned the screen toward us. They weren't just random investments. Your father's been laundering money through them. Lots of it. Mom sank into a chair. How much? Based on what I've found, at least 15 million over the past decade. That's why he needed my identity, I said. His own would have raised red flags. Exactly. And here's the kicker. He's been doing it for others too. Wealthy clients who needed their money, cleaned. My phone buzzed again. Peyton, your father knows you were in the office today. He came back early from golf. He's asking questions about the filing cabinet. Cold fear washed over me. He knows. I showed them the message. Michael immediately started copying files to a flash drive. We need to move fast. If he realizes how much we know, he'll destroy everything. Mom finished, suddenly looking fierce. Not if I can help it. I'm going home now, going to keep him distracted. You two do whatever you need to do. She hugged me tightly before leaving. Be careful, sweetheart. Your father, he's not who we thought he was. After she left, Michael turned to me. What's our next move? I thought about the gala, just 2 days away. About all those wealthy clients who'd be there, not knowing their carefully hidden secrets were about to explode. We stick to the plan, I said, but we need to move up our timeline. The gala isn't just going to be a family event anymore. It's going to be a public execution. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 p.m. Dad stood on Parker's doorstep, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. Princess, he said, his voice strained. We need to talk. Parker appeared behind me. She doesn't want to talk to you. This is family business, Dad snapped. It doesn't concern you. Actually, I said, stepping onto the porch and closing the door behind me. It concerns a lot of people, including your clients. His face went pale. What have you done? Nothing yet. But I know everything, Dad. The money laundering, the fake companies, using my identity to hide millions for your wealthy friends. He grabbed my arm, pulling me closer. Lower your voice. You have no idea what you're talking about. Let go of me. I yanked my arm free. Or should we discuss this at the gala instead? I'm sure your clients would love to hear how you've been handling their money. You wouldn't dare. But there was fear in his eyes now. I'm your father. Really? Because fathers don't steal their children's identities. They don't commit fraud using their daughter's name. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. Everything I did was to secure our future. Your future. My future, I laughed bitterly. I'm facing prison time because of you. No one's going to prison, he said quickly. I can fix this. Just give me time. Don't do anything rash. My phone buzzed, a text from Michael. Documents ready. Elizabeth says we're good to go. Time's up, Dad. I turned to go back inside. See you at the gala. Summer, wait. He reached for me again, but Parker opened the door. I think you should leave, Parker said firmly. After Dad's car disappeared, I collapsed onto Parker's couch. That was harder than I expected. You did great, he said, sitting beside me. What's next? I need to see Mom. She's been texting all day about something she found. Mom was waiting at our old treehouse, my childhood refuge that Dad had built himself. The irony wasn't lost on me. Look at this, she said as soon as I climbed up, holding out a USB drive. I found it in his desk while he was out looking for you. I plugged it into my phone. Spreadsheets, documents, emails, all carefully organized by year. Mom, this is everything, she finished. Every transaction, every client, every fake company. He kept records of it all. Why would he risk keeping this? Insurance, she said grimly, in case any of his clients tried to turn on him. But that's not all. She pulled out an envelope. I found these too. Letters from his clients, thanking him for his services. Some very prominent names. My hands shook as I read them. This is exactly what we needed. But Mom, once this gets out, I know. She looked older suddenly, tired. 20 years of marriage gone. But he did this summer. Not you, not me. My phone buzzed with a text from Peyton. Your father's acting strange, ordering me to shred more files. Something about the gala guest list? I showed Mom the message. He's panicking. Good, she said firmly. Let him panic. I forwarded everything to Michael and Elizabeth, then called Michael. This is perfect, he said after I explained. The story's ready to go. We just need the right moment at the gala. I'll create that moment, I promised. Later that night, I sat in Parker's living room, staring at my phone. Dad had sent another message. Whatever you think you know, you don't understand the whole picture. Don't destroy everything I've built. Please, Princess. Parker read it over my shoulder. You okay? No, I admitted. But I will be. After tomorrow. Are you sure about this? Once it's done? There's no going back, I finished. I know, but he gave up the right to my loyalty when he stole my identity. My phone buzzed again. Elizabeth this time. Documents filed with the FBI. They're ready to move as soon as the story breaks. I thought about Dad's face earlier, the fear in his eyes, the way he'd reached for me like I was still his little girl. Part of me wanted to call it off, to believe his excuses about protecting our future. But then I remembered those documents in the filing cabinet. My signature, forged over and over. My identity, used to hide millions in dirty money. My future, sacrificed for his greed. The gala starts at 7 tomorrow, I told Parker. By 8, everything changes. I'll be there, he promised. We all will, I said, thinking of Michael with his story ready, Mom with her evidence, Elizabeth with her legal documents. It's time for the truth to come out. And somewhere across town, in his big, empty house, my father was about to learn that his greatest creation, his perfect, obedient daughter, would also be his destruction. The gala ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and false pretenses. I smoothed down my black dress, feeling the USB drive secured in its hidden pocket. Dad spotted me immediately, making his way through the crowd with that practiced smile of his. Princess, he said, kissing my cheek. You look beautiful. Thanks, Dad. Quite a turnout tonight. His grip on my arm tightened slightly. About yesterday. We should talk privately. Of course, I smiled. After your speech? He relaxed slightly, nodding. Across the room, I caught Mom's eye as she chatted with some of Dad's clients. She gave me an almost imperceptible nod. Summer. Peyton hurried over, looking flustered. Thank goodness you're here. We have a situation with the presentation. Dad's head snapped up. What presentation? The slideshow tribute, I said innocently. For your charity work? Don't worry, I'll help Peyton fix it. As we walked away, Peyton whispered, There's something you need to see. Now. She led me to her office, closing the door. I found something while organizing the final documents for tonight. She pulled out a folder. These were meant to be shredded, but I made copies first. My hands shook as I read. Transfer documents, all dated within the last week. Dad was moving money again. Massive amounts. He's trying to hide everything before it all comes out, I realized. Summer. Peyton's voice cracked. Some of these transfers, they're in my name too. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he was using my identity as well. The door opened suddenly. Dad stood there, his face dark with rage. Both of you, in the ballroom, now. Dad, now. We followed him back to the party. Michael was there now, mingling with his press badge. Mom stood near the podium where Dad would give his speech. Everything was in place, but Dad's expression told me he knew something was wrong. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, clinking his glass, "if I could have your attention." The room quieted. This wasn't planned. His speech wasn't supposed to start for another 30 minutes. "I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight," he continued. "But before we proceed, I need to address something." His eyes found mine. "My daughter has recently discovered some discrepancies in our family business." My heart stopped. He was going to try to get ahead of it. "Dad," I said loudly, stepping forward, "don't." "These discrepancies," he continued as if I hadn't spoken, "might seem concerning out of context, but everything I've done has been completely legal." "Legal?" The word burst from me. "Like identity theft is legal? Like money laundering is legal?" The room went dead silent. "Summer," he warned, "think very carefully about what you're about to do." I pulled out the USB drive. "You mean like you thought carefully about stealing my identity? About using me to hide millions in dirty money?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw several of Dad's clients shifting uncomfortably. "Or maybe," I continued, my voice carrying across the silent room, "we should ask your clients how they feel about their money being laundered through fake companies in my name." "Security," Dad barked. "Remove her." "Don't bother." Michael stepped forward, press badge visible. "This is all on record now. The story goes live in 5 minutes." "And the FBI has everything," Mom added, her voice strong despite her tears. Dad's face went from red to white. "Jessica, you knew about this?" "I found your records," she said. "All of them. The ones you kept as insurance against your clients. They're with the authorities now." The room erupted in chaos. I saw several people rushing for the exits, phones already at their ears. Peyton stood frozen, clutching her folder of evidence. "You've destroyed everything," Dad said, advancing toward me, but Parker stepped between us. "Don't," Parker warned. "It's over." Dad's shoulders sagged. For the first time in my life, he looked old, defeated. "I gave you everything," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "You took everything. My identity, my trust, my future. But tonight, I'm taking it all back." The first police sirens wailed in the distance. Dad's clients were fleeing now, the ballroom emptying rapidly. Michael was already on his phone, presumably talking to his editor. Mom stood with Elizabeth, who had legal documents ready. "Princess," Dad tried one last time, "please." "My name," I said clearly, "is Summer, and I'm not your princess anymore." The ballroom doors burst open as FBI agents flooded in. As they approached Dad, reading him his rights, I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, only a hollow sort of peace. The truth was finally out, and with it, my father's carefully constructed empire of lies came crashing down around us all. The morning after the gala, I sat in Elizabeth's office, watching the media frenzy unfold on her wall-mounted TV. Michael's story had broken wide open, and now every news channel was running with it. "Local business mogul arrested for massive financial fraud," the headlines screamed. Dad's face was everywhere, looking shell-shocked as the FBI led him away in handcuffs. "The IRS is dropping all charges against you," Elizabeth said, setting down her phone. "They're treating you as a victim of identity theft, which you are." "What about the others?" I asked. "Peyton? Mom?" "Peyton's cooperating with authorities. Her testimony about the document shredding will be valuable. As for your mother," Elizabeth sighed. "She's protected. She had no knowledge of the fraud." My phone buzzed. A text from Dad's attorney. "Your father wants to see you." "Don't go," Parker said immediately. He'd been quiet until now, sitting beside me and holding my hand. "I have to." I stood up. This needs to end face to face. The detention center was cold and sterile. Dad sat across from me in his orange jumpsuit, looking like a stranger. "You've made quite a splash," he said, attempting his usual confident smile. It fell flat. "That wasn't my goal." "No?" He leaned forward. "Then what was your goal, Summer? To destroy your family? To ruin everything I built?" You did that yourself, I said quietly. Every time you forged my signature, every time you used my identity to hide your crimes. Crimes? He scoffed. I created opportunities, built a legacy. Everything I did was for our family's future. Stop lying, I snapped. It wasn't for us. It was for you, your greed, your power, your reputation. He fell silent, studying me. You're different now. I had to be, to survive you. I'm your father. No, I cut him off. A father protects his child. He doesn't use her as a shield for his crimes. The guard announced our time was almost up. The prosecutors offered me a deal, he said quickly. If I cooperate, name names. Then take it. For once in your life, do the right thing. His face crumpled. I'm sorry, Princess. I never meant... Save it. I stood up. Your apologies mean nothing now. Outside, Michael was waiting with fresh coffee and news. The story's everywhere, he said as we walked to his car. More victims are coming forward. Other parents who used their kids' identities for fraud. You've started something big. I didn't want to start anything, I said. I just wanted my life back. My phone rang. Mom. They're searching the house, she said without preamble. The FBI found more documents in his study. Summer, the numbers are worse than we thought, much worse. I closed my eyes. How much? Over 50 million, and not just from his clients. He was stealing from charities, too. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. All those galas, all those charitable donations, just more fronts for his schemes. Back at Parker's apartment, I found Peyton waiting. I gave them everything, she said, wringing her hands. Every file, every transaction I knew about. They're offering me immunity. Good, I said. You should take it. Summer. She hesitated. There's something else. Your father, he had plans for you. He was grooming you to take over, to continue his operation. The room spun slightly. What? Those documents you signed 2 weeks ago? They weren't just for show. He was gradually transferring control to you. He wanted you to become him. I sank onto the couch, Parker's arm immediately around my shoulders. He didn't just steal my identity, I realized. He was trying to steal my soul. My phone buzzed again. Elizabeth. Turn on the news, now. We crowded around Parker's TV. Dad was being led into court, but this time he wasn't alone. Several of his wealthy clients were there too, all in handcuffs. Breaking news, the reporter announced. In a shocking development, prominent business leader Terrence has agreed to cooperate with authorities, exposing a network of financial fraud that reaches into the highest levels of local society. He took the deal, Michael said softly. I watched my father's face on the screen, remembering all the bedtime stories he used to tell me about right and wrong, about integrity and honor. All lies, just like everything else. It's really over, I whispered. Parker squeezed my hand. No, it's just beginning. You're free now. Free. The word felt strange, powerful. For the first time since that IRS notice arrived, I could see a future that wasn't tainted by my father's crimes. But as I watched him disappear into the courthouse, I realized some prices are too high, even for freedom. The cost of this one was my father, my family name, and every childhood memory I'd ever treasured. The courtroom fell silent as Dad stood for sentencing. I sat between Mom and Parker, Michael on the row behind us, his notepad ready. Terrence, the judge began, your cooperation with authorities has been noted. However, the severity and duration of your crimes cannot be overlooked. The court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison. I watched Dad's shoulders slump as the judge continued listing penalties and fines. When the gavel struck, finalizing everything, he turned to look at me one last time. Wait, I said, standing up as the bailiff approached him. I need to say something. The judge nodded, and I walked to the podium. Dad, my voice shook slightly. You used to tell me that our name meant something, that integrity was everything. I believed you, every word. He stared at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. But now I understand. Those weren't lessons. They were warnings. You were showing me exactly who you weren't, hoping I'd become everything you failed to be. Finally, he looked up. Well, congratulations, I continued. I am. I'm choosing integrity, truth, everything you taught me but never lived, and that's the last thing you'll ever give me. As the bailiff led him away, he called out, "Princess." "Goodbye, Dad." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Michael stepped forward, handling their questions while Parker guided me through the crowd to his car. "Where to?" he asked once we were inside. "The house," I said. "One last time." Mom met us there, keys in hand. "The sale closes tomorrow. Did you get everything you needed?" I nodded, walking through the empty rooms that had once held so many memories. In Dad's study, I opened his desk drawer one final time. There it was, the photo I'd come for. Me at 5 years old, sitting on Dad's shoulders at the park. Both of us laughing before the lies, before the fraud, before everything fell apart. "You should take it," Mom said softly from the doorway. "Why? It's not real. None of it was." "The love was real," she said. "That's what makes this so tragic. He loved you, Summer. He just loved power more." My phone buzzed. "Elizabeth, IRS officially cleared you. Your credit's being restored. You're free and clear." In the kitchen, I found Peyton boxing up the last of the files for the FBI. "I got a job offer," she said. "Compliance officer at a bank. Ironic, right?" "Perfect, actually. Who better to spot fraud than someone who helped hide it?" She smiled sadly. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Didn't tell you." "You did when it mattered." Parker appeared with the last box from the basement. "Found something you should see." Inside was a journal, Dad's private records. The first entry was dated the day I was born. "My daughter arrived today," I read aloud. "Perfect and pure. I swear I'll give her everything, make her proud." I closed the book. He really believed he was doing the right thing, didn't he? "The road to hell," Michael said from behind me, "is paved with Father's intentions." Later that evening, we all gathered at Parker's apartment. Mom, Michael, Peyton, Elizabeth. Family, but chosen this time, not born into. "The story's going international," Michael said, showing us his laptop. "People are coming forward everywhere. Parents using their kids' identities, hidden accounts, generational fraud. You've sparked something huge." "We should start a foundation," Mom suggested. "Help other victims navigate this. Use what we've learned." "Already working on it," Elizabeth said. "The FBI wants Summer to consult on similar cases." I looked around at these people who'd helped me expose the truth, who'd stood by me through everything. "Thank you," I said simply. "All of you." "What now?" Parker asked, taking my hand. I pulled out the childhood photo I'd taken from Dad's desk. The little girl on those shoulders had believed in fairy tales and happy endings. The woman I'd become knew better. "Now," I said, "we build something real, something honest." "Together," Mom added firmly. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from Dad's prison email account. "You were right. About everything. I'm sorry I couldn't be the father you deserved. But I'm proud of the daughter you've become. Not Princess anymore, just Summer. Strong, honest, true. Everything I should have been." I showed the message to Parker. "Are you going to respond?" he asked. "No," I said, deleting it. "Some stories don't need happy endings. They just need true ones." Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars, each one a promise of possibility. My father had built his legacy on lies, but I would build mine on truth. It wouldn't be perfect or easy, but it would be real. And really, that's all I'd wanted from the beginning.
The day I decided to destroy my family's legacy started like any other Thursday morning at Graham Technologies. I stood in the doorway of my brother Emiliano's corner office, watching him dismiss my latest proposal without even looking up from his phone. "Ruby, we've been over this. The company doesn't need a digital transformation right now. We're doing fine the old-fashioned way. I'm Ruby Graham, and I've spent 30 years being the family's afterthought, the daughter they never quite knew what to do with. Our competitors are eating into our market share," I pressed, gripping my tablet tighter. "We're losing clients because our systems are outdated. I can show you the numbers." "Little sister," Emiliano cut me off with that condescending smile I'd grown to hate. "Stick to what you're good at. The IT department is cute, but leave the big decisions to those who understand business." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. 3 degrees in computer science and business, and he still treated me like I was 12. My phone buzzed. A message from Valerie. "How'd it go?" I walked out without another word to my brother. In the elevator, I texted back, "Same old story. Meeting for coffee?" 20 minutes later, I sat across from Valerie at our usual spot, stirring my latte perhaps a bit too aggressively. "I swear, Val, sometimes I think they kept me in IT just to have someone to blame when their computers crash," I said, running a hand through my hair. Valerie leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Then why are you still there? Ruby, I've seen your work. The algorithms you developed for their security system. That's genius-level stuff." "It's the family business," I sighed. "Dad always said—" "Your dad handed everything to your brothers on a silver platter," Valerie interrupted. "And now Emiliano's running it into the ground while Hayden plays yes man. My other brother Hayden at least had the decency to look uncomfortable during board meetings, but he never stood up to Emiliano either." "You should see the books," I muttered, lowering my voice. "We're hemorrhaging money, but nobody wants to admit it. Dad's retired but still thinks everything's fine because Emiliano keeps feeding him BS reports." "So what are you going to do about it?" I looked up, surprised by the challenge in Valerie's voice. "What can I do? I'm just the little sister who graduated top of her class at MIT," Valerie cut in, "who developed 3 patented security protocols before turning 25, who could probably build a better company from scratch if she wasn't so busy playing the good daughter." I stared into my coffee, letting her words sink in. My phone buzzed again. A message from Sarah, our family advisor. "Your brother rejected another major client. We need to talk." "They'll never take me seriously," I said quietly. "Not while I'm under their roof." Valerie reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Then maybe it's time to build your own roof." I looked at my best friend, really looked at her. Valerie had been trying to get me to partner with her on a startup for months. I'd always refused, citing family loyalty. What if— I started slowly, an idea taking shape. What if we did it in secret? Built something of our own while I stay at Graham Tech, gathering intel? Valerie's eyes lit up. "Now you're thinking like a CEO." "They'd never see it coming," I continued, feeling a spark of excitement for the first time in years. "They don't even bother reading tech news. They wouldn't notice until you're too big to ignore," Valerie finished, grinning. My phone buzzed one more time. A group text from Dad. "Family dinner tonight, attendance mandatory. Your mother's making pot roast." I showed Valerie the message and rolled my eyes. Another chance to hear about how amazing my brothers are. "Perfect," Valerie said. "Go, play the part. But starting tomorrow, we're building your empire." I sat back, a plan forming in my mind. "You know what? You're right. I'm done being the family disappointment. It's time they learned what their little IT girl can really do." "That's my girl," Valerie raised her coffee cup. "To new beginnings?" I clinked my cup against hers, feeling something shift inside me. To new beginnings. And maybe, just maybe, to making them regret ever underestimating me. As we left the coffee shop, I was already mentally drafting business plans. They thought keeping me in IT was keeping me in my place. They never considered that from my little corner of their kingdom, I could see everything. Every weakness, every vulnerability, every mistake. They'd learn soon enough. The black sheep of the family was about to become their worst nightmare. 6 months flew by like a caffeine-fueled fever dream. By day, I played the dutiful sister at Graham Technologies. By night, Valerie and I built our startup, Ruby Secure, from the ground up in her garage-turned-office. "Another all-nighter?" Valerie asked, sliding a fresh coffee across our makeshift desk. "Really just an old door balanced on sawhorses." "Worth it," I said, spinning my laptop around. "Look at these test results. Our AI security protocol just caught every single breach attempt in the simulation." Valerie leaned in, her eyes widening. "Ruby, this is incredible. Traditional firewalls didn't even detect half of these threats." "And that's not even the best part," I grinned, pulling up another window. "It adapts. Every attack makes it stronger. It's exactly what I tried to implement at Graham Tech, but Emiliano said it was unnecessarily complex." My phone buzzed, speaking of the devil. A text from Hayden. "Em's calling an emergency board meeting. Something about Q3 projections. Go." Valerie said before I could speak. Keep up appearances. I'll finish the investor pitch deck. 2 hours later, I sat in Graham Tech's plush boardroom, watching Emiliano tap dance around the fact that we'd lost 3 major clients in 2 months. It's just a temporary setback, he assured the board, shooting me a glare when I snorted quietly. Our traditional approach has served us well for 30 years. Traditional won't cut it anymore, I spoke up, earning surprised looks from around the table. Our competitors are offering AI-driven solutions while we're still pushing manual monitoring. Here we go again, Emiliano rolled his eyes. Ruby, not everything needs to be automated. Our clients appreciate the human touch. Really? I pulled up an email on my tablet. Is that why MaxiCorp just jumped ship to next-gen security? Their CEO specifically cited our outdated infrastructure as the reason. Sarah, our advisor, nodded grimly. She has a point, Emiliano. We can't ignore. I'm not taking technical advice from my baby sister, Emiliano snapped. This meeting is adjourned. Later that evening, my phone lit up with an unknown number. Ruby Graham? Speaking. This is Marcus Thompson from Venture Capital Partners. Your friend Valerie sent over your pitch deck. I'd love to discuss it further. Are you free for lunch tomorrow? I stepped into my apartment's hallway, heart pounding. Absolutely, Mr. Thompson. Please call me Marcus. I have to say your AI security solution is unlike anything I've seen. The adaptive learning capabilities alone. The next day, Valerie and I sat across from Marcus in a high-end restaurant, watching him flip through our business plan. Your prototype results are impressive, he said, setting down his fork. But what makes you sure you can compete with established players? I pulled out my tablet. Because I know exactly what they're missing. Take Graham Technologies, for instance. Their market share has dropped 15% in the last quarter because they refuse to innovate. Their clients are desperate for exactly what we're offering. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You seem very familiar with their operations. I should be, I smiled. I'm their head of IT. Or at least, I am for now. Isn't that a conflict of interest? Not at all. I developed this technology independently on my own time. Everything's properly documented and legally clear. Marcus sat back, studying me. You know, most people would be afraid to go up against a family business. Most people haven't spent their entire careers being underestimated by their own family. He nodded slowly, then reached for his briefcase. Well, Ms. Graham, I think we might have something here. How does 5 million in seed funding sound for starters? Valerie gripped my arm under the table as I maintained my composure. That sounds like a good beginning. Later that night, as we celebrated in our garage office, Valerie raised her champagne glass. To Ruby Secure's first big break. To showing them what unnecessarily complex can do, I clinked my glass against hers. My phone buzzed. Hayden again. Ruby, things are worse than M's letting on. Any chance we could talk? Privately? I showed Valerie the message. She smirked. Looks like someone's finally noticing the ship is sinking. Should I meet with him? Absolutely. The more intel, the better. I texted back. Tomorrow, coffee shop on 5th, 8 a.m. Valerie topped off our glasses. You know, your brothers are going to lose their minds when they realize what you've built. I thought about Emiliano's dismissive smirk, about years of being relegated to the kids' table at family functions, about every time they'd talked over me in meetings. Good, I said, raising my glass again. It's about time they realized their baby sister grew up. The prototype hummed quietly in the corner, its screens displaying a steady stream of caught threats. Soon, very soon, they'd all see exactly what I was capable of. I arrived early at the coffee shop, choosing a corner table where I could watch Hayden's approach through the window. He showed up exactly on time, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. Thanks for meeting me, he said, slumping into the chair. I didn't know who else to talk to. What's going on, Hayden? He glanced around before leaning forward. We're in trouble, Ruby. Real trouble. Emiliano's been cooking the books. I kept my face neutral, though my heart raced. How bad? Bad enough that if the board finds out, we're done? He ran a hand through his hair. We've been operating at a loss for months. M's been moving money around to hide it, but But you can't hide red ink forever, I finished. There's more. Hayden's voice dropped even lower. Remember that big government contract Em was bragging about at dinner last month? I nodded, taking a sip of coffee. He faked the security certification requirements. If anyone audits us... My phone buzzed. A text from Savannah, Emiliano's wife. Need to talk, it's urgent, lunch today. Does Savannah know? I asked Hayden. He shook his head. Em doesn't tell her anything anymore, but she's not stupid. She's been asking questions. I texted back. 12:30, Italian place on Main. What are you going to do? I asked Hayden. He looked miserable. What can I do? He's my brother. Our brother. He's also committing fraud. Ruby, please, just help me figure out how to fix the security systems. Maybe if we can actually deliver what we promised. It doesn't work that way, Hayden. You can't retroactively fix fraud. My phone buzzed again. Sarah this time. Board meeting tomorrow. Bring your department's numbers. Something's not adding up. Hayden stood up. I should go. Em can't know we talked. Hayden, I called after him. Be careful. At 12:30, I sat across from Savannah watching her push pasta around her plate. I found something, she said finally, in Emiliano's home office. Documents about offshore accounts, shell companies. Why are you telling me this? Savannah looked up, her eyes tired. Because you're the only one who sees him for what he is. Hayden's too loyal, your father's too proud, but you've always known, haven't you? Known what? That he's a fraud, that he's been destroying everything your grandfather built. I studied her carefully. What do you want from me, Savannah? Help me stop him before he takes us all down with him. My phone lit up. Valerie. Major tech blog wants to interview you about Ruby Secure. What should I tell them? Savannah caught the name on my screen. Ruby Secure? The new security startup everyone's talking about? Her eyes widened. That's you? I hesitated, then nodded. Oh my God, she whispered. Does Emiliano know? Not yet. A slow smile spread across her face. Good. Keep it that way. At least until what? Until you're strong enough to take him down. Back at the garage office that evening, I filled Valerie in. This is perfect, she said, pacing excitedly. We can use this. The timing couldn't be better. It feels wrong, I admitted. Using their weakness. Wrong? Valerie stopped pacing. Like how they used your loyalty, your talent. Ruby, they're about to implode anyway. At least this way you can save the company's employees. My phone buzzed yet again. An anonymous email. Thought you might find these interesting. Attached were documents showing Emiliano's detailed scheme to defraud investors. Who sent this? Valerie asked, reading over my shoulder. I have a guess, I said, thinking of Savannah's determined face. What are you going to do? I stared at the documents, years of dismissal and disrespect flashing through my mind. I'm going to that board meeting tomorrow, and I'm going to watch them squirm. And then, I smiled, I'm going to make them an offer they can't refuse. My phone lit up one final time. Dad. Dinner on Sunday. Your mother misses you. I showed Valerie the message. Should I go? Of course, she grinned. It might be your last chance to play the dutiful daughter before everything changes. I looked at our prototype, now housed in a proper server rack, then at the damning documents on my screen. You know what the funny thing is? They always told me I was too soft for business. Well, Valerie raised her coffee cup. Here's to proving them wrong. Tomorrow would change everything. The board meeting would expose the first cracks in Emiliano's facade, and I would be there to watch it crumble. The question was, when the dust settled, would anything be left of our family? The board meeting was a powder keg waiting to explode. I sat quietly watching Sarah methodically dismantle Emiliano's facade with a stack of financial reports. These numbers don't match our filed statements, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. Would anyone care to explain the discrepancy? Emiliano's confident smile flickered. There must be some mistake in the accounting. No mistake, Sarah interrupted, sliding more papers across the table. We've lost 6 major clients in the past quarter alone. Our security certifications are being questioned, and there's a significant amount of money moving through accounts I can't trace. I caught Hayden's eye across the table. He looked like he might throw up. If I may, I spoke up, opening my laptop, I have the IT department's security audit results. This isn't the time, Ruby, Emiliano snapped. Actually, Sarah said, it's exactly the time. Please continue, Ruby. I connected my laptop to the projector. Our current security infrastructure is critically outdated. We're vulnerable to at least 17 different types of cyber attacks, the certification we claimed for the government contract. We don't meet even half the requirements. The room erupted in murmurs. Emiliano's face turned red. That's enough, he slammed his hand on the table. This meeting is not adjourned, Sarah cut in. The board has questions that need answering. My phone buzzed. Valerie. Tech Insider just published their piece about Ruby Secure. It's going viral. Right on cue, one of the board members held up his tablet. Emiliano, have you seen this? A new security startup is revolutionizing the industry. Their AI-driven approach is exactly what Ruby's been proposing for years. Emiliano grabbed the tablet, his face draining of color as he read. His eyes snapped to me. You... I smiled sweetly. Yes? Before he could respond, the boardroom door burst open. Savannah strode in, holding a USB drive. Sorry I'm late, she said, not sounding sorry at all. But I think the board needs to see this. Savannah, what are you doing? Emiliano stood up. Showing them the truth, she plugged the drive into the projector. About the offshore accounts, the shell companies, all of it. The next hour was chaos. Documents flashed across the screen, proof of Emiliano's fraud, faked certifications, everything. I watched my brother's empire crumble in real time. This is a witch hunt, he sputtered. You can't prove. Actually, Sarah said, we can. The SEC will be very interested in these records. My phone buzzed again. Dad, what's happening at the office? Emiliano's not answering his phone. I ignored it, watching Hayden finally find his voice. How long? He asked Emiliano. How long have you been lying to us? I was protecting us, Emiliano shouted out, protecting our legacy. By committing fraud? I stood up. By destroying everything grandfather built? You, he pointed at me, realization dawning. Ruby Secure, that's your company, isn't it? You've been planning this. Planning what? To succeed where you failed? To build something legitimate while you played shell games with our family's reputation? The board members were whispering among themselves. Sarah cleared her throat. In light of these revelations, I moved to suspend Emiliano from his position immediately, pending a full investigation. You can't do this, Emiliano looked around wildly. Dad won't allow... Dad's retired, I reminded him, and you're about to be under federal investigation. My phone lit up. Valerie again. 3 of Graham Tech's biggest clients just reached out. They want meetings with Ruby Secure. Hayden caught my eye, nodding slightly. I knew what he was thinking. There might still be a way to save the company, but not with Emiliano at the helm. I'll have security escort you out, Sarah told Emiliano. Don't remove anything from your office. As security led him away, he stopped beside me. You planned this? All of it? My own sister? No, Emiliano. You did this. I just built a better mousetrap while you were busy burning bridges. After he left, Sarah turned to me. I assume Ruby Secure might be interested in acquiring certain assets. We might be, I smiled, once the dust settles. Later that night, I sat with Valerie in our office, watching our stock price soar following the Tech Insider article. Think your dad's seen it yet? She asked. Probably. He's left 6 voicemails I haven't listened to. Are you going to call him back? I looked at my phone at the missed calls from family members who never bothered to call before today. Eventually, I said. But first we have a company to save. Just not the one they expected. Valerie raised her glass. To the power of being underestimated. I clinked my glass against hers, thinking of Emiliano's face when he realized who had really outmaneuvered him. To karma, I replied. And to finally playing my own game. The media storm hit faster than anyone expected. By morning, every tech blog was running stories about Graham Technologies' collapse and Ruby Secure's meteoric rise. I sat in our now legitimate office space, watching the chaos unfold on multiple screens. "Another interview request," Valerie announced, waving her phone. "Forbes this time." "Tell them," my phone buzzed. Dad again. This time I answered. "Hello? Ruby." His voice sounded older than I remembered. "We need to talk. Family meeting. Tonight." "I'm pretty busy." "This isn't a request." The line went dead. Valerie raised an eyebrow. "The summons finally came?" Before I could respond, Sarah walked in looking exhausted. "The SEC just arrived at Graham Tech. It's a full investigation now." "How bad is it?" I asked. "Bad enough that Emiliano might be facing jail time." She sat down heavily. "Your father's beside himself." My phone lit up with a text from Hayden. "Em's gone missing. Savannah's worried he might do something stupid." "Perfect timing," I muttered, showing Sarah and Valerie the message. "You need to go to that family meeting," Sarah said firmly. "Show them you're still part of this family even if I helped expose their golden boy as a fraud. Even then." That evening, I pulled up to my parents' house, where multiple cars already lined the driveway. Hayden met me at the door. "Heads up," he whispered. "Dad's been drinking." The tension in the living room was thick enough to cut. Mom sat rigid in her armchair, while Dad paced by the fireplace. Savannah huddled in a corner looking worried. "Well," Dad said as I entered, "here's our tech genius. Happy now, Ruby? You've destroyed your brother's life." "Emiliano destroyed his own life," I replied calmly. "I just built a better company." "A better—" Dad laughed bitterly. "You went behind our backs, stabbed your own family." "Like you went behind my back," I interrupted, "giving my brothers control of a company I helped build, ignoring every suggestion I made. You were in IT. I was in IT because you put me there, because God forbid the daughter have any real power in the family business." Savannah stepped forward. "Emiliano's been calling me. He's talking crazy, saying he's going to expose everyone." "Expose what?" Mom asked sharply. "That's what I'd like to know," I said, looking at Dad. "What else is he hiding?" Dad's face paled slightly. "Nothing, he's just upset." My phone buzzed. A message from an anonymous number with attachments. I opened them and felt my breath catch. "Dad," I said slowly, "want to explain why your signature is on these offshore transfers? Dating back 5 years?" The room went silent. Hayden moved to look at my phone, his face hardening. "You knew," he said to Dad. "You knew what Em was doing." "I was protecting this family," Dad shouted. "The market was changing. You needed to commit fraud?" I asked. "To fake certifications. To put everyone at risk." "Ruby," Mom spoke up, "surely there's something you can do. Your new company." "Could buy what's left of Graham Tech," I finished. "Clean up this mess legally, but there would be conditions." "What conditions?" Dad demanded. "I run everything. No interference, no backseat driving, and you both retire, completely. You can't, I can, and I will, because right now, I'm your only option." My phone buzzed again. "Valerie, 3 more Graham Tech clients just signed with us. Stock's up 40%. Think carefully," I told my parents, "because Emiliano's not the only one facing jail time if these documents go public." Dad slumped into a chair, suddenly looking every bit his age. "You're blackmailing us. I'm offering you a way out, more than you ever offered me." Hayden cleared his throat. "I'll back Ruby. She's right. It's the only way to save anything." "Hayden!" Dad looked betrayed. "I'm done enabling this," Hayden said firmly. "Ruby knows what she's doing. She always did." My phone lit up one more time. "Sarah, SEC wants to interview your father tomorrow. Time's running out." I held up my phone. "TikTok, Dad. What's it going to be?" The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, Mom stood up. "Accept her offer, Robert," she said quietly, "before we lose everything." Dad looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. "When did you get so hard?" When you taught me that being soft meant being ignored, I headed for the door. You have until morning to decide. After that, I can't help you. As I left, I heard Mom start to cry. Part of me wanted to go back to comfort her, but that part was getting smaller every day. In my car, I texted Valerie, "Get the paperwork ready. Tomorrow we either save Graham Tech or watch it burn." Her response was immediate. "Either way, you win." I wasn't so sure about that anymore, but it was too late to stop now. Morning brought a flurry of messages. The first was from Emiliano. "You think you've won? Watch the news at 9. The second was from Dad. "We'll take the deal." The third was from Sarah. "Emergency meeting now. Emiliano's threatening to go public." I rushed to Graham Tech's offices where chaos reigned. Reporters camped outside the entrance, and security struggled to maintain order. Sarah met me at a side door. "He's lost his mind," she said, hurrying me through back corridors. "He's scheduled a press conference in 30 minutes. The boardroom was packed. Dad sat at the head of the table, looking defeated. Mum wasn't there. Hayden paced by the windows while Savannah typed frantically on her phone. "He's not answering my calls," Savannah said, "but he sent me this." She held up her phone, showing a draft of Emiliano's prepared statement, a document that would implicate everyone, including himself. "He's going to destroy himself just to take us all down," Hayden muttered. My phone buzzed. "Valerie, our legal team's ready. Say the word." "Where is he?" I asked. "Plaza Hotel," Savannah replied. "He's booked their conference room." I checked my watch. 20 minutes. "Dad," I said, "I need your signature. Now." He looked up, confused. "What?" I pulled out a folder. "Transfer of ownership. Complete control of Graham Tech to Ruby Secure, effective immediately. Now, but sign it, or in 20 minutes, everything goes public. Your choice." His hand shook as he took the pen. As he signed, my phone lit up with another message from Emiliano. "Last chance, little sister. Back off or everyone burns." I forwarded it to Valerie. "Execute Plan B." "What are you doing?" Hayden asked. "Saving what I can." I turned to Sarah. "Get the SEC on the phone. Tell them we're self-reporting and cooperating fully." "Ruby," Dad protested. "It's done," I cut him off. "I own the company now, and I'm doing this right." My phone rang. Emiliano. I put it on speaker. "Hello, brother." "Called to gloat?" His voice was slurred. "Called to tell you it's over. I just bought the company. The SEC is already involved. Your press conference will only hurt you now." "You think I care? You think I think you're drunk and angry," I interrupted. "And I think you should know that Savannah's pregnant." The silence was deafening. Savannah shot me a startled look, then slowly nodded. "What?" Emiliano's voice cracked. 8 weeks, Savannah said quietly. "I was waiting for the right time to tell you." "So, here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to cancel that press conference. You're going to check yourself into rehab. And when you get out, if you've cooperated with the investigation, there might be a future for your child that doesn't involve visiting their father in prison." More silence. Then, "How do I know you'll keep your word? Because unlike you, I actually care about this family's legacy." The line went dead. 5 minutes later, Savannah's phone buzzed. "He's cancelling the press conference," she said, relief evident in her voice. Dad stood up shakily. "What happens now?" "Now?" I looked around the room. "Now I clean up your mess. But first," I turned to Sarah. "Call security, clear out Emiliano's office and Dad's too." "Ruby," Dad started. "Go home," I said firmly. "Both of you, spend time with Mom. Let me handle this." As they left, Hayden approached me. "What about me?" "That depends. Are you ready to actually work for a living?" He nodded. "I want to make this right." "Good, because I need someone who knows operations and you're the only one I still trust." My phone buzzed one last time. "Valerie. Press release is ready. Want to announce the merger?" I looked around the boardroom at the family portraits on the walls, at the legacy I'd just inherited. "Send it," I texted back, then to Hayden. "Ready to build something real this time?" He smiled slightly. Lead the way, little sister. Later that evening, I sat in what used to be Emiliano's office, my office now, watching the sun set over the city. My phone lit up with a message from Mom. "I'm proud of you." I should have said that years ago. I stared at those words for a long time, feeling the weight of everything that had changed. The company was mine now, but at what cost? And could anything ever be the same again? Valerie appeared in the doorway. "Coming. The team's waiting to celebrate." I stood up, taking one last look at the family photo on the wall. "Yeah," I said. "Let's go build something worth celebrating." 3 months after the takeover, I stood in front of the merged company's board, presenting our first quarterly results. The room was different now, younger, more diverse, with Valerie and Hayden flanking me instead of my father's old guard. "Ruby Secure's integration with Graham Tech has exceeded projections." I clicked through the slides. "Revenue is up 60% from last quarter. Client retention has stabilized at 95%. "And the government contracts?" one board member asked. "Fully compliant now," Hayden answered. "We've passed every security audit with flying colours." My phone buzzed. Savannah. "M's completing his programme. Doctors say he's doing well." "What about the SEC investigation?" another board member pressed. "Resolved," I replied. "Full cooperation and transparency earned us minimal fines. The criminal charges are confined to the previous management." The meeting continued smoothly until Sarah, who'd stayed on as advisor, raised her hand. "There's one more item. Your father's requesting a meeting." The room went quiet. I kept my voice steady. "For what purpose?" "He says he has information about additional offshore accounts we haven't found yet." My phone lit up again. Mom this time. "Please talk to your father. He's trying." "Schedule it," I told Sarah, "but in the office, not at home." After the board dispersed, Valerie lingered. "You sure about meeting him?" "No choice. We need to find every skeleton before they find us." The next morning, Dad sat across from me in my office, looking smaller than I remembered. "The decorations are different," he noted, glancing around. "The company's different," I replied. "The accounts." He pulled out a notebook. "There are 3 more. Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and—" "Why now?" I interrupted. "Why tell me this after 3 months?" He set the notebook down. "Because I'm dying, Ruby." The words hit like a physical blow. "What?" "Cancer. Stage 4. Maybe 6 months left." My phone buzzed. "Hayden, Dad told you?" "How long have you known?" I asked Dad. "Found out last week. Your mother's taking it hard." I stood up, walking to the window. "The accounts?" "Ruby, the accounts, Dad. That's why you're here." He sighed, opening the notebook again. For the next hour, we worked through the details, my team documenting everything. When we finished, he lingered by the door. "The company's thriving under you," he said quietly. "I was wrong. About everything." "Yes, you were." "Your mother wants you to come to dinner. Sunday." My phone lit up, Valerie. "Major tech conference wants you as keynote speaker. Theme: Women revolutionizing security." "I'll think about it," I told Dad. After he left, Hayden came in. "You okay?" "Are you? You knew about Dad?" "Found out yesterday. Mom called." I sank into my chair. 6 months. "Yeah." Hayden sat across from me. "What do you want to do?" "About the company? Nothing changes. We keep building." "About Dad?" My phone buzzed again. Emiliano this time. "Heard about Dad. Can we talk?" I showed Hayden the message. He nodded slowly. "Maybe it's time." "For what?" "To decide what kind of legacy we really want to leave." Later that day, I called a meeting with Valerie, Hayden, and Sarah. "I need your honest opinions," I said. "Can we bring Emiliano back? Not as an executive, but maybe in sales or—" "No," Valerie said immediately. "Hear me out," I continued. "Dad's dying. The company's stable. Maybe it's time to—" "To what?" Sarah interrupted. "Return to the old ways? Ruby, you've built something remarkable here. Don't risk it out of guilt." My phone lit up. A message from the rehab facility. "Mr. Emiliano has shown exceptional progress. Family support would be beneficial at this stage." Hayden read the message over my shoulder. What if we start small? Let him prove himself. Under strict supervision, Valerie added reluctantly, and with no access to finances. I looked around at my team, my real family for the past year. Vote on it. They nodded. One by one, they wrote their votes on paper. When I counted them, the result was unanimous. Conditional second chance. I texted Emiliano, "Sunday dinner at Mom's. We'll talk then." His response was immediate. "Thank you, little sister." Looking out over the city skyline, I thought about legacy, not just the companies, but our families. Maybe there was still time to build something worth leaving behind. My phone buzzed one final time. Mom, family dinner on Sunday. All of you. No business talk, just family. For the first time in months, I smiled at a family message. "I'll be there," I texted back. Sometimes the hardest part of winning isn't the victory itself. It's deciding what to do with it. Sunday dinner felt surreal. Mom had set the table with the good china. Like nothing had changed, but everything had. Emiliano sat across from me, sober and subdued, while Savannah's small baby bump showed under her dress. Hayden kept glancing between us nervously, as if expecting an explosion. "The pot roast is excellent," Valerie said, breaking the silence. "I'd insisted on bringing her. I needed at least one ally here." "Thank you, dear," Mom smiled. "Ruby's grandmother's recipe." Dad cleared his throat. "I understand the company won Innovation of the Year." "We did," I nodded. "Hayden's team deserves most of the credit." "Our team," Hayden corrected. "Ruby's leadership made it possible." Emiliano set down his fork. "I saw the presentation online, the AI security protocol. It's brilliant." "It's what I tried to tell you 3 years ago," I couldn't help saying. "I know." He met my eyes. I should have listened. My phone buzzed. "Sarah, major acquisition opportunity just came up. Need your decision by morning." I ignored it. This dinner was more important. "I've been thinking," Emiliano continued, "about what you said about legacy." Savannah warned softly. "No, let me finish." He took a deep breath. "I spent years trying to be what Dad wanted, the strong son, the leader. I never stopped to think about what was best for the company, for our family." Dad started to speak, but Mom touched his arm, silencing him. "Ruby," Emiliano said, "you were right. About everything. And I'm sorry." The words hung in the air. My phone buzzed again. Valerie had texted under the table. "You okay?" I set my napkin down. "Sorry isn't enough. I know. But," I continued, "actions might be." Everyone looked at me. I pulled out a folder I'd brought, sliding it across the table to Emiliano. "What's this?" he asked. "A job offer, entry level, sales department. You'll report to Hayden." "Ruby," Dad protested, but stopped when Mom squeezed his hand. "Why?" Emiliano asked. "Because you're good with people when you're not trying to prove something, because your child deserves to know their father, and because—" I glanced at Dad. "Life's too short for permanent exile." Savannah started crying softly. Hayden reached over and grabbed her hand. "There are conditions," I continued. "Regular drug tests, no access to company finances. One mistake and you're out." Emiliano nodded slowly. "When do I start?" "Monday, if you're ready." "I am." He looked around the table. "I really am." My phone lit up again, this time with a photo from Sarah. The company's name on the NASDAQ board, our stock price hitting a new high. "Look," I showed everyone the photo. "This is us now, all of us. If we want it to be." Dad stood up suddenly, wobbling slightly. Mom rushed to steady him. "I need to say something," he announced. "Ruby, when I built this company, I thought I knew what strength looked like. I was wrong. You're stronger than I ever was." "Dad, let me finish. I'm proud of you. Not just of what you built, but of who you are, even when that means standing against me." Mom was crying now too. I felt Valerie squeeze my hand under the table. "The company's in better hands now," Dad continued. "All I ask is, let me help while I can." Even just to share stories about your grandfather, about how it all started. I stood up, walking around the table to him. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then I hugged him, feeling his frailty, knowing our time was limited. Sunday dinners, I said. Every week, no business talk, just family. Just family, he agreed. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from Sarah that made me smile. I showed it to everyone. Forbes just named you one of the 40 under 40. Headline reads, Ruby Graham, redefining family business for the digital age. To Ruby, Hayden raised his glass. Everyone followed suit. No, I said, to family, the one we choose to be. Later that night, as Valerie and I left, she asked, was it worth it? All of it? I looked back at the house, at my family visible through the window, broken but healing, changed but together. Ask me again in 6 months, I said. But right now, yeah, it was worth it. What's next? I smiled, thinking of the acquisition opportunity waiting in my inbox of Emiliano's first day tomorrow, of Dad's stories still untold. Next, we build something that lasts, something worthy of the name they never thought I could carry. Together, she asked. Together, I agreed, all of us.